Someone is calling Blair's name. She yells for him to wake up immediately. The whole room laughs, asking why he still studies there. The boy asks where he is. Someone pulls the sleeve of his shirt. The girl tells Blair that Brittany will call again. Looking back, he sees the magnificent woman in front of him. Angrily, she asks if Blair forgot where he is. The boy says that this woman is his great teacher. She pulls his ear. His teacher says she can't believe he's sleeping in class and immediately asks Blair to answer math question 15. The protagonist doesn't know what to do, but putting his hand on his forehead, he says he understood the problem. The teacher says he can answer the question by tomorrow, and that this is the punishment for sleeping. The whole room continues laughing at him, saying he will never be able to solve such a difficult problem. But Blair seems very confident. She notices that the boy's confidence is at the level of an experienced academic. The miserable one is a genius and answers correctly, blushing. The teacher says that's impossible. Our boy asks if he can go to the bathroom, and she says yes. The room is restless after this little demonstration. Looking at the board, he sees that the calculations are correct. Everyone screams in shock as our boy walks through the school. In his mind, he says that expression doesn't need a progression calculation. It's just a crossing. Chen Lu is just an ordinary teacher who believes in mathematics. He worked hard for a long time and will finally receive the title of senior professional next year. But when he was taking the exam, he dozed off, and when he woke up, he was in another world. The protagonist says this is not scientific and calls for Newton to help him. Looking closely, he realizes he is now a boy bad at math, and the current world values it highly. Still, he is impressed that the students couldn't solve that simple problem and acted as if it were difficult. Blair says he doesn't know how he came to this world, but seeing how everyone is stupid, he might reach the top, reach the pinnacle of life using mathematics. We see a girl with pink hair. She and the protagonist end up bumping into each other. Our boy asks if she's okay, but the two are in a somewhat suspicious situation. Noticing this, Blair immediately gets off her. He quickly apologizes, saying he wasn't paying attention. The blonde girl steps back, saying it's him again. The protagonist sees that she knows him. Very angry, she says that Blair bumped into her at the entrance ceremony and embarrassed her, swearing never to forget. She adds that he bumped into her again, but this time deliberately and vulgarly. From Blair's face, he doesn't know what to say or do. Trying to resolve the situation, the protagonist says she hit him first. Suddenly, the girl makes strange gestures with her hand. Then she seems to be reciting a spell. Our hero sighs, thinking she's crazy. Then he jokes, doing the same thing, but in a funny way. A strange symbol suddenly appears. The girl's hand is on fire. She says she will go after Blair with everything she has. From her expression, the ending wasn't so easy. The boy doesn't know what to do when he gets a fireball in the face, but the girl yells at him to be ready to be punished. The protagonist has a great idea. Before being killed, he bows and apologizes profusely for what happened. Of course, the blonde didn't expect that. Clenching her fist, she asks him not to think it's over just because of those apologies. But when she finishes saying that our hero is no longer there, Blair is running as if his life depends on it. In his mind, nothing makes sense because magic and science coexist. Suddenly, the protagonist's head starts to hurt. Because of this, he ends up fainting. Fragments of Blair's memories are wandering through his mind, and we see him crying, asking for his father. The general died honorably fighting. Someone hands over a box offering condolences. A hand and his son in front of a house. Around them, people say that after the general died, the woman became just a poor ex-noble who needs to work. Blair is heading towards his mother, telling her he got into college. She says he must study hard, and meanwhile, the boy says he has grown up. In her mind, her son is identical to his father. An old man asks Blair to hurry. If he can't do it, he won't be able to sleep there in the future. The boy says he will definitely come home. Our protagonist knows that the owner of this body, despite working so hard, never had a talent for magic, and he was always insulted by his classmates. Returning to the present, his friend calls him, asking if Blair is okay. He says her name is Jasmine, but wonders how she found him there. Being very kind, she extends her hand to help him up. Blair thanks her, but thinks to himself that the previous owner had a hard life, so from now on, it will be up to him. In a classroom, the teacher is teaching the 4 types of magical elements. The bald man says that this world is divided between ordinary people and those who can use magic, and their school is the best and most famous among all the others. Magic is divided into 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and air. Through gestures, the mage can use spiritual energy to manifest such power. We see that after the class, students are happy to finally be able to leave. We see the same boy a little sad after hearing these statements. Before leaving, our boy calls for his teacher. He asks what dear Blair wants. The protagonist asks the teacher if a person without talent can still use magic. Being arrogant, he says the boy has asked that many times. Then he leaves, saying it's impossible to use magic without the necessary talent. People around are mocking him for being so serious but still having no talent. His friend arrives and says Blair doesn't need to be sad if he doesn't graduate, because if he can't, he will work on his father's estate. In his memories, the protagonist remembers that this is Toby, Blair's best and only friend. The boy is smiling for having driven away the guys who were bothering him. Toby says he's leaving and our boy waves goodbye. While Jasmine watches, looking back, the protagonist asks if she has something to say, and being very shy, the girl answers no. Then she runs off, saying that teacher Brittany is calling him to the office. Blair thinks she's strange for always sneaking around and watching him all the time. Stealthy says it's ironic to have an absurd knowledge of math but no talent for magic. Our boy tries to recite a fireball spell, but as expected, nothing happens. His expression is one of disappointment, but something appears, emanating the reddish aura. Hot fire comes out of his hand. It makes a spiral around his arm. In his subconscious, Blair didn't expect this. After all, doing this is impossible without talent. Putting that aside, the protagonist starts playing with the fireball. After all, it's not every day that you go to another world. Our boy says that maybe because he's a traveler, he must have been enlightened. But he soon remembers that he needs to go to the office of the great teacher Brittany. The sunset seems to be approaching. Blair knocks on the door, calling her. When he enters, he apologizes for being late. For some reason, our boy blushes. And the reason is in one of the teacher's poses. We see that the protagonist is infatuated with her. She smiles, saying he finally arrived. Brittany asks him not to mind her strange poses. Then she asks Blair to sit in the chair. The woman says she prepared hundreds of calculations for him to do. She soon throws all the papers on the table. Brittany says she will leave and asks the boy not to rush. Suddenly, the protagonist already says the answer to the question. At the same moment, she asks if that's possible. Then she runs towards Blair. She soon says that if it were her, she wouldn't be able to do it. Our boy doesn't know what to say to the woman in front of him. Being friendly, Brittany asks if he can explain how he solved the question. Blair is defeated by the power of her cuteness. In his mind, he says his teacher is more foolish than usual. Hitting the table, Blair says he did the operation in sequence, but the problem and the statement were very prone to errors. Brittany says there's only one solution and one way to do this. He says that's not right, because for this problem, you just need to find a pattern. Sum all the penultimate numbers until they add up to 80. Pointing to the board, the protagonist asks if she knows what the sum of all the penultimate numbers can be to get 80. Very excited, she raises her hand and says 39. Blair says the answer is correct and then asks her to sit down. Our boy explains that from a tedious addition problem, the account became a simple multiplication problem. With this kind of method, you can solve several problems in an easy way. Brittany asks how there can be such an intelligent way. She then adds that this solution can be more generalized. If you sum all the numbers of a constant period, then the formula can be described as simple. With various calculations, the teacher's head ends up in another world. Our boy wakes her up, asking if everyone in this world is that dumb. She responds with another question, asking if this is the solution. Smiling, Blair says it's easier to calculate this way and everyone can do it too. Taking our boy's hand, the woman says he's a genius. If he is willing to always study, his future will be unlimited. Brittany doesn't know, but is emanating a terrifying force that is overwhelming the protagonist. Stepping back, she apologizes for getting a bit too excited. Brittany asks if Blair wants to be a great mathematician. He says no and adds that he wants to be a great magician. Hearing this, the teacher becomes sad. Brittany passionately says that he received intelligence given by the gods and shouldn't waste it, and as far as she knows, he has no talent for magic. Because no matter how Blair looks at it, the answer to everything is mathematics. Our Sigma boy pushes her away immediately, and says that no matter what, he will indeed become a magician. In his mind, Blair says that if he just threw in some advanced equations, he could become a great mathematician. But those are just works of another world. In his perspective, magic is much more attractive than any equation or square root. Brittany asks if the protagonist dares to make a bet with her. In a few days, there will be a magic test in the classroom, and this test will determine Blair's future at the academy. Our boy says he already knows that the woman says that if he really wants to be a magician, he must pass the test. And she adds that this will be like a game. If Blair doesn't pass, she will do something to keep him at school, but he will have to be a mathematician. But if he manages to pass, Brittany will no longer insist and asks what the protagonist thinks. In her mind, she says this is a lost game for the boy who has no talent. Still, the protagonist accepts. Leaving there, Blair says that his teacher is very persistent. He remembers what she said before about not forgetting the agreement. Our boy stops thinking about it and refocuses his mind on studying magic. Turning to the side, we see the fire girl. As if it were destiny, the two bump into each other. Before falling, Blair says this feeling is familiar. When he looks and sees who it is, he is shocked. The girl goes at him this time to kill him. She soon recites the fire spell. A ball of the recited element appears in her hand. But looking ahead, the protagonist is no longer there and says that if he had stayed, he would have been burned. Brittany asks why Isabel seems so unhappy since she arrived. Immediately, the girl says she encountered a pervert at school and adds that next time she will definitely burn him alive. Isabel throws the papers on the table, saying she had already solved the problems. She is happy since it only took her half an hour. Brittany says Isabel is almost faster than her, but says Blair took only 1 minute. She doesn't know what to say, and in her head, this is impossible, and asks who this boy is. Her teacher says he used a solution never seen before. Brittany tells Isabel what the protagonist taught. She says it is a very intelligent way to solve it. Very excited, she asks her teacher to introduce her to Blair. Brittany notices that the girl is very enthusiastic and then says she will do it. Moments later, Isabel kicks the classroom door, asking who here is Blair. Toby already suspects his friend is in trouble. Someone pinches him from under the table. This is our boy asking him to stay quiet. Toby tells her that the protagonist left the room. Of course, Isabel suspects the situation. Leaving, she asks that when he arrives to tell him she wants to talk to him. The protagonist's friend is a bit nervous but says he will indeed let him know. The girl slams the door and leaves. Blair comes out from under the table. Everyone is in great silence. The boy doesn't seem well as he had to face his senpai. Toby asks what the hell the protagonist did. Our boy is deeply confused because he doesn't know who she is. His friend says he really seems like a robot who only knows how to study and work. Toby says Isabel has many followers at the academy, and if those guys find out Blair offended her, things won't end well. Our boy says the academy has rules and they can't do whatever they want. Toby asks if the boy knows where the school is. Blair doesn't know how to respond, so he says something like in the Sea of Apollo. His friend asks him not to be so stupid. Isabel's father is the Lord of Apollo City. Our boy asks if there's still time to apologize. Someone in the background shouts about the protagonist touching Lady Isabel. The bully says he won't do anything since Blair will be expelled after failing the test. Toby notices that the guy wants to start a fight. The bully explains that just having good grades allows you to stay in the academy, but after graduation to remain, you must know magic. Therefore, all second-year students have to take a test, and if they fail, they are expelled immediately. However, for normal students, this is like a walk in the park. But this changes because Blair has no talent. In his mind, the protagonist understands why teacher Brittany chose this test for the agreement. To get attention, the bully slams the table. He asks if Blair didn't hear what he said, and adds that the boy is just a bastard orphan. After saying this, Toby stands up from his chair. He then asks if the bully wants to fight. Arrogantly, the bully says it's none of his business. Toby says the protagonist is his friend, and it's his duty to protect him. The bully gets angry and says he'll remember this. Leaving, he says that next time he'll settle this. In his mind, the protagonist says this chubby guy might not seem reliable, but in critical moments, he is very loyal. Confidently, our boy asks if Isabel came to bother him, would he do the same? Toby says if the girl asked him to hit the protagonist, he would do it instantly. These words leave Blair desolate. The day of the test arrives, and the teacher explains that the magic everyone will use is the fireball and adds that this is basic, so most should pass. In this test, besides reciting the spell, students must hit the target. The teacher asks the bully to start. We then see the guy reciting the spell. He soon throws the fireball and hits the target, passing with 8 points. The teacher calls the next person. The bully sees our boy in the crowd and tells him to enjoy his last moment in the academy. Toby tells the bully to shut up. The next person will be the chubby guy. He recites the spell just like the bully. Small fireball appears and he struggles to maintain it. Toby throws it towards the target. A small spark reaches it, and the teacher says it counts. Of course, the boy is happy about that. The teacher looks at the protagonist's document and already knows he has no talent for magic. He sighs, saying that Blair is a little fool. The teacher was about to say that everyone passed, but the bully interrupts to say something. He says one person is still missing. Student Blair hasn't taken the test. Our boy stays silent. The teacher asks if Blair will take the test. At that moment, everyone laughs, saying it's impossible since he can't even do the basics, and they call him Blair the magical idiot. Toby comes close, saying it's obvious they planned this against all odds. The protagonist says he will take the test. No one understands the reason for his decision, but of course they mock it with all their might. The girls say Blair still doesn't realize he's a magical waste. The teacher tells them all to be quiet, and again asks if the boy will take the test. Blair says yes, he will take the test, so he says he can start now. Our boy is right in front of the target. He knows he can do magic without reciting, but he'll still pretend. The protagonist starts reciting the spell, then commands the fireball to manifest. Everyone covers their eyes, thinking something will come out, but no magic can be seen. Soon the students start laughing and mocking the boy. But that was just a matter of time for his fury to ignite. A large fire magic can be seen with the naked eye. The target is completely destroyed. In the area, everyone is scared by this, but Brittany is sad. Knowing our boy has talent, we see the ashes spreading over the grass. Then the teacher says Blair passed the test. The bully says that's impossible. Toby is excited, saying he knew his friend was amazing. The teacher asks Blair to come with him. In her mind, Brittany wonders how our boy did that. The lie that Blair told to avoid being discovered is that he practiced every day, and suddenly it worked. The teacher says that magic is given by the gods, and those who can't manifest it are called forsaken by the gods. People who lack talent are extremely rare, and someone who previously had none and now does is almost like a joke. Anyway, he says that our boy has great potential to become a mage. In his mind, Blair says that last time someone persuaded him to be a mathematician. Now it's for magic. The teacher says that the protagonist has really worked hard during this period and will certainly reach the level of a Saint Mage. Blair realizes that the Saint Mage level is the highest one can achieve, and adds that there is a story of someone who reached this level and their main power is to tear the fabric of space and time. Our boy starts to realize what he can do if he reaches the maximum. Soon after, Blair looks at the teacher and says that he will certainly become a Saint Mage. Elsewhere, the protagonist says that the academy took a few days off because of the test. Using this short period, he studied magic books to the maximum, and then discovered that the levels of mages are divided into 7, with the Saint Mage being the pinnacle. Their powerful magics are described only in books. Accounts claim that a Saint Mage can tear the fabric of space-time and travel between different worlds and dimensions. But the current world does not believe in this nonsense, but our boy thinks about how he ended up in this place and knows that maybe this might have something to do with it. Unfortunately, his teacher does not believe in spatial magic, so he couldn't get more information. Someone arrives and asks if Blair is still reading. The protagonist says this is the administrator. Our boy asserts that he will continue to read. The next day, Blair stayed up all night studying. He opens the classroom door. The crowd is already formed, and everyone is gossiping about the past event. About Blair's magic being great and powerful, other students say he was just hiding his strength. The girls say that if you pay attention, the boy is actually quite handsome. In front of him, Isabel is sitting. Of course, he wonders why she is there. In such a suspicious position, Blair covers his eyes, saying he cannot see. Isabel says it is unexpected that he is the person Brittany was talking about. Blair tries to say that this is all a misunderstanding. She yells, calling the boy a pervert. Her fury is overflowing in the form of magic. Then she starts reciting a fireball spell. Our boy tries to defend himself in some way, but soon realizes that nothing hit him. Luckily, his teacher arrived in time, stopping Isabel from doing something bad. Brittany says it is forbidden to use magic inside the classroom unless permitted by a superior. The girl asks her to listen, but Brittany tells Isabel to be quiet. Then the teacher says she was looking for him and tells him to go to her office. Brittany adds that Isabel should go with him too. Blair feels proud, but still, the miserable boy is indeed a genius. The three leave and soon the door closes. The bully is left confused and asks what just happened. Inside the teacher's office, Blair is sincerely apologizing for his actions and adds that everything that happened was a misunderstanding. Brittany says the boy was careless and asks Isabel not to be bothered. Still arrogant, she accepts the apologies. A bit sad, the teacher tells Blair that his magical power is beyond her understanding and, as promised, she will not persuade him anymore. But she asks how he managed to do it and if he could teach her. Our boy says it just happened and says he has a question about magic. Being savvy, she says she won't force him to answer and adds that the protagonist can ask anything. Blair asks if one needs to use gestures and recite the magic to invoke it. Isabel says that question is very stupid because even a child knows that anyway. The protagonist continues asking if all mages are the same. Brittany says that no matter the level, to invoke magic, one needs gestures and to recite it. The only ones who don't need that are the gods. Isabel says her teacher doesn't need to answer such a ridiculous question with such seriousness. Our boy notes that he is different and maybe can do it because he is not from this world. Brittany continues to explain that this is common sense, and if Blair wants to be a great mage, he must memorize theory books. But that's not why she called him to her office. His teacher has a type of paper in her hand, and our boy is confused because he doesn't know what it is. Isabel says this is a journal where the most important academic works of the entire kingdom are published. Suddenly, the girl is startled by something she sees. She notices that her teacher's and Blair's names are in the journal. Brittany says she submitted the formulas she learned from the protagonist. Blair doesn't care about this since he earns little money working in the library, and as far as he knows, you can't eat paper. His teacher says she almost forgot something. She hands over a bag full of coins, saying this is a bonus for the manuscript. Of course, the protagonist is happy since he earns 2 silver coins a month, and in one day he got more than 50. All thanks to his wonderful teacher. Innocently, Brittany says she will take half since she also contributed. Now our boy will receive only 25 silver coins. In his mind, he says he has never seen such a cunning snake. Anyway, it's still a good amount. Like it or not, Blair has an idea to make a lot of money. Looking at his teacher, the boy asks if there is always a bonus of 50 coins for each published work. The woman says she didn't pay much attention to that, but maybe that's normal since the journal is famous, being very clever. Blair says he has been having a good thought lately and continues, saying he thought of solving a formula in a unified way. Brittany realizes something incredible is happening in front of her again and adds that this might be the mystery of Ross. Our boy doesn't know who this guy is, and his teacher explains that it's a mathematical problem posed by the great mathematician Ross. She does the math and soon says that in the problem, Ross has 7 cats, 7 wives, and 7 bags. Blair says the solution is easy, but if you want to simplify it, just use the unified formula. Hearing this, Brittany is happy that the great mathematical problem can be solved simply. In his mind, he says he still has some preliminary ideas. His teacher calls him to help solve the problem. Time passes quickly while the two are studying. Isabel ends up falling asleep, but a noise wakes her up. She wakes up to her teacher shouting that this is incredible. Brittany says the protagonist really has a great talent for mathematics. Isabel comes closer, saying she didn't know the boy was all that, and asks if all this came from his head. He gets serious, asking if she really wants to know. Blushing, she says Blair can't keep telling lies. The protagonist says he just spends a lot of time with math while others are sleeping. The girl gets embarrassed, asking what he is talking about. Another day, Isabel is thinking about Blair. In front of her, she sees him acting suspiciously. This is the second-year building and the protagonist is in the first year, so she wonders if he will harass the seniors. This time, she will follow him to see what Blair is up to, but observing our boy had already disappeared. We see that the protagonist is in front of a large wall. Earlier, Toby had talked about this wall in the second and third-year building. Doing several flips, Blair says his teacher is right. He said the protagonist could go to the city to find a high-level mage to teach him. Outside the academy, our boy finds everything interesting, because the city is bustling with all kinds of people. Walking around, our boy says this place is very prosperous. In front of him is the Magic Association. Apparently, this building is huge and majestic. He takes a mask from his pocket and puts it on his face, saying it's better not to reveal his identity. Entering the place, it seems a bit crowded. Seeing up close, the receptionist is his friend, but she doesn't recognize him because of the mask. She asks if the protagonist wants to hire a magic consultant. Blair says yes, and in his mind, he says the girl must be working part-time. Jasmine says the consultant fees range from 15 gold coins to 2. After hearing that, he can't stand it because the amount is absurd and 100 silver coins are equivalent to 1 gold coin. So he apologizes for the inconvenience, but she runs after him. Jasmine says that if money is a problem, Blair can get a library loan card. Hearing this, our boy is surprised. Then the girl says that the institution has a large library. It may not be as good as an instructor, but it's better than nothing. Blair says he will make the card, and then Jasmine asks for his credentials. Of course, this shakes him because before he didn't even know his name, let alone where important documents are, and the girl says she thought he was already a mage but still has the option to borrow a credential. Or getting the certification, which is easier since you just need to cast a spell of the element corresponding to the mage certifying you. Blair asks if he can get the certification here. She says he can, but she doesn't recommend doing it today, because the certifier this time is very strict. Ignoring everything, the protagonist says he will do it today. 2 men appear, and Jasmine says that Blair wants the certificate. They sit down, and the bald man questions why Blair is wearing a mask. Hiding the reason, our boy lies about his name and says he was practicing the fireball spell and ended up burning his face. The old man says that burning yourself with a basic spell is not very common. Arrogantly, the bald man says Blair will be a junior mage only in his next life. Jasmine asks everyone to head to the testing area, but the man refuses, saying there's no need, and adds that Blair can use his fire magic to attack him. This scares the boy since he didn't expect it to be like this. Because he knows the power of the attack, speaking directly, the old man asks if he thinks his little fireball can hurt Andra. The protagonist tries not to insist much, and since he's being asked. Around him, the fire magic is spreading through the room. Seeing that, Andra says to the old man that this year there's no one decent. But of course, the spell isn't over as the protagonist continues gathering all his mana. Everyone realizes this is going to be extremely dangerous. But the bald man had asked Blair to attack him, and our boy strictly obeys. The gigantic sphere, more like the sun, is heading toward Andra. His only reaction is to await the terrible silence of imminent death. An explosion occurs, and a beam of light blinds the people around. After the attack, smoke rises. Not knowing what to do, Jasmine coughs. In front of her, the smoke is dissipating, and we see the old man. When he sensed the incoming danger, he raised a barrier, and it withstood the fireball well, thus saving Andra from becoming a barbecue. Desperate, he has no reaction and remains on the ground. His face of terror can be seen as a synonym of hopelessness. Jasmine is astonished by the destructive power, and meanwhile, our boy apologizes, because he thought they were ready, so he decided to use a bit more force. After all this, Jasmine hands him the certification and the library card. The protagonist is excited because he can finally study. Very enthusiastic, the girl says she has never seen anything like that and adds she is sure Blair will be a great mage in the future. He thanks her, and she says she will wait for him until next time. But Jasmine notices something. How did the boy know her name? In the library, Blair didn't expect there to be so many people. Sitting and looking at various books, he says this is strange. As the girl had said, the books in this library are more comprehensive and in-depth, especially the part about magical spiritual power. We are explained that spiritual power defines the strength of a mage's magic besides their affinity with the element. High-level mages have an immeasurable advantage over the weaker ones. However, the theory of the 4 elements described in the books is an absurd compliment given the little knowledge this world has about mathematics. People believe that the 4 elements are responsible for the foundation not only of magic, but of the entire world. All other elements are derivatives of the four main ones. It's the same principle as primary colors. Going deeper into the subject, Blair notices several different things, like the existence of magic in this world having no scientific explanation. The protagonist thinks of something brilliant about elemental communications. He abruptly gets up from the chair he was sitting in. With a big smile on his face, he says that if everything goes well, he can create a new magic. Then he grabs the library card. Very excited, he runs out saying he will make a great discovery, so he will return to the academy and then test it to see if it works. In the background, we see Jasmine, the old man, and Andra. They are having a magnificent coffee. As always, the bald man continues to belittle Blair but says the power of the fireball is immeasurable. Stroking his beard, the old man says it was strange because he had no control over the protagonist's magic. It was like something entirely different from this reality. Surely there is something about this boy that they won't be able to understand. Night falls and the protagonist is jumping over the academy wall. His jumps are simple and quick, landing on the ground after jumping onto the grass. He says that since no one is around, he will test his theory right away. Calmly and lightly, our boy closes his eyes. He takes a deep breath to feel the energy of the environment. At the same moment, he feels something coming. He notices that he can really control the entire flow. The boy says he will now try to sense the second most abundant element in the atmosphere, gathering energy in the palm of his hand. This is O2. Observing it, the protagonist cannot say if it is pure oxygen. Concentrating as much as he can, he manages to do something impressive. Mixing the power of fire with oxygen, he discovers that this is 100% real. But the spark that was igniting suddenly goes out, causing a great disappointment. Still, with eyes full of determination, our boy tries again to control both elements as one. Lightning and winds are succumbing to everything. Meanwhile, the protagonist is within the vortex of fire and oxygen. The entire academy trembles and everything starts to crack and break. The teacher feels the tremor and asks what it is looking out the window. She notices something like a great explosion. Almost the entire forest was set on fire. The good news is that Blair is alive and well. Incredibly, the magic was so strong that it still surrounds him. Fortunately, the boy managed to stop in time. The dense fog hovering over the area dissipates and the protagonist notices something. The ground was shattered, completely combusted. It turned out that the oxygen was much purer than he thought. After hearing the explosion, people start to appear. Blair flees, saying it wasn't supposed to cause such a commotion. Running through the forest, the boy says the explosion might have been big. However, it created something significantly large. The next day in the classroom, the protagonist is studying as usual. He ended up falling asleep due to the eventful night he had. A hand hovers over his shoulder. It's Toby asking if Blair knows what happened last night. Lying blatantly, he responds that he doesn't know because he was sleeping. He explains that an explosion occurred, and now the school is under investigation as there are suspicions of seniors casting spells. Given the size of the crater, it was at least a high-level mage. The chubby boy starts thinking about the most suspicious people, then says that teacher Brittany is a high-level mage. After this statement, for some reason, the boy becomes alert. He goes to her office and knocks on the door. She opens it, happy that Blair came by, because she really needed him. Holding a paper in her hand, she says that the Mathematical Society posted something about the solution to Ross' problem. Since it was the protagonist who solved it, his name is listed as the author. She then congratulates him on solving one of the greatest mathematical problems. Interrupting this topic, Blair says there are more important matters to address. He shouts that he wants to study mathematics with her. The woman doesn't understand the reason for this decision. Brittany asks what happened to the story of becoming a great mage, and the boy says he will be both. Suddenly, she grabs his arm, and then says she is happy Blair thinks that way. She then tells him to come to her office every night to study mathematics. The protagonist is emotional with all this enthusiasm that feels like a volcano erupting. Brittany says that with the boy's talent, he will surely become a great mathematician, and stepping away from her, Blair says he has a magic question and asks if she can answer it. The conversation was brief. The woman agreed to help and answer questions whenever he wanted, and then the protagonist opens the door to leave. His teacher reminds him to come by the next night. As the boy is about to close the door, Brittany tells him to wait. Then she falls silent, making the atmosphere tense. Blair gets scared and asks what she wanted. She doesn't respond or say anything, but then asks if the boy is taking advantage of her to get answers to various magic questions. She looks intently at the protagonist. Sweating heavily, our boy realizes he's been found out. With flowers around him, he tells a half-truth that he just wants to spend more time with her. Brittany approaches him, and of course, the protagonist thinks he's going to die. Being very cute, she asks the boy to be careful when leaving and reminds him to come by at night after class. Practically, Blair feels like he's been expelled from there. In his subconscious, the protagonist doesn't know if she is stupid or intelligent. Later, the next night, the boy arrives and opens the office door. Brittany is sitting with Isabel. Suspicious, the girl looks at him and asks what he is doing there. The woman apologizes to Isabel because she forgot to mention that starting today, Blair will be studying with them. And since Isabel is his senior, she must take care of and help him when needed. She then asks Blair to sit next to Isabel as she has a question she'd like him to answer. The large stone is thrown into a well, followed by another stone with double the mass, and she asks which stone will reach the bottom first. Isabel says she just needs to calculate the time, but our boy explains that the larger stone will never catch up with the smaller one. Ignoring air resistance, the smaller stone would be the first to arrive. After hearing this response, the girl gets annoyed. She then says that Blair has good knowledge but lacks common sense. Brittany says she didn't understand what the protagonist said, but the wise ones have stated that the object with the greater mass will fall first. For some reason, the girl continues to argue, saying that even a child knows this, of course. After these statements, Blair gets a bit angry, questioning if she has confirmed this. Isabel says they cannot doubt the great sages. The teacher just observes the confrontation between the two. Quickly and directly, the boy says that for something to be true, it has to be proven. She retorts, asking if he wants to bet to see if it's true. Brittany tells them both to stop, but Isabel says she bets 10 gold coins. At that moment, the protagonist gets excited. The three go outside the academy to an open field to conduct the tests. Holding the stones, the teacher asks Blair to think it over because 10 gold coins is not a small amount. Apparently without remorse, the boy tells her to continue beside him. Isabel says this will be the easiest victory of her life. Looking at the girl, Brittany says confidence is a good thing, but arrogance can lead to a point of no return. A strong wind blows over everyone present. Then the teacher starts to float. After witnessing this, the boy is impressed. Seeing Blair's surprise, she mocks him, saying he's a commoner for finding this so interesting. The teacher is now in a high enough place to drop the stones. With a serious look, Brittany prepares to start the test. Meanwhile, Isabel continues arrogantly, saying with certainty that Blair will lose. The stones are released and quickly fall. For a moment, the two seem to be at the same speed. Then they fall almost simultaneously. With a surprised look, Isabel doesn't know what to say, excited. Our boy already knows he has won the bet. After this, the woman descends to check. We observe that her landing is long and smooth. The girl shouts that this is totally impossible. Both look at the result in surprise. Brittany asks how on earth the protagonist knew that, and he says he saw it in a book and then tried it. Thousands of years have passed and humanity was believing in a great lie. All the errors and common senses were unveiled by Blair, and that's certainly not luck. She tells the boy that the law of falling objects has completely changed after this test. Of course, our boy is not too impressed since this is basic in his world. His teacher repeats that Blair is a genius, and beside him, Isabel is seething with rage. Looking at the girl, she asks him to update the law of falling objects with her help. With a serious expression, the protagonist says he will need Isabel's help. For a moment, the girl thinks about all this. In her mind, she sees both of them in the newspapers with the title, The Emergence of Two Geniuses. Of course, this would be a shock to the industry, and her reputation level would rise. Typical that Sundeer. She pouts but soon accepts. The girl thinks about her and our boy, the two happy and together discovering new things about mathematics. And maybe when they get married, her name would be Blair Isabel. Her blushing face can be seen from afar. Elegantly, she tells the protagonist that if he gets into trouble, he can call her and she will surely solve everything. Blair extends his hand to the girl. Things in her brain become totally confused. Being very cute, she asks why he's extending his hand, and Blair says he wants the bet money. Well, gold coins are never too much. Isabel runs away crying, telling him to put crap in his head. A few hours later, she gives the coins. In his subconscious, Blair says he got rich just by making a bet with the arrogant, spoiled girl. Approaching, Isabel says he doesn't care about fame or honor, but apparently he likes money. For a few seconds, the protagonist remains silent. Meanwhile, the girl asks what Blair wants. The beautiful blue sky covers the entire world. The leaves sway with the wind that incessantly continues to wander. Memories of his fake past life. Hours working and teaching. Still, he was always happy with his students. The boy asks what she is talking about standing up. Blair simply says that he wants money to improve his life. Nothing more, nothing less. Leaving, he bids farewell to Isabel and Brittany. The two beauties watch our boy walk away. The next day, Blair is almost asleep at his desk. Nevertheless, he is happy because now he has money. Maybe he should even move house in the future. Someone arrives and is bully calling the boy's attention. He says that his senior is looking for him and immediately tells the trash to get up. Blair doesn't understand anything and just stands still, grabbing his wrist. Bully tells him to lower his head because casting a fireball means nothing. The voice resounds, telling the bully to let Blair go. The student this time is Senior Feige. Basic attributes and common appearance, but he apparently has two bodyguards. Looking back, a protagonist doesn't know who this guy is. Feige approaches, asking if he is Blair. For a brief moment, the guy stares at him, but our boy ignores him and asks if Bully didn't hear the senior telling him to let go. After letting go, the protagonist questions what's happening. The guy tells Blair to stay away from Isabel from now on because someone like him shouldn't be getting close or even talking casually. Then everyone leaves and the protagonist just watches. Feige ends up bumping into Toby. He doesn't apologize and the chubby boy remains on the ground. Getting up, he goes to Blair and asks if he's okay. Simply, our boy explains that the senior just came to exchange some words. Toby seems afraid of the guy. He says everyone at the academy fears him, and Blair is the only one who doesn't care. The boy is the son of the great Viscount and the youngest heir of the Howard family. He adds, if someone offends him, they'll have a hard time living in the academy. Putting a hand on Blair's shoulder, Toby says he knows the protagonist is infatuated with Isabel's beauty, but advises him to follow Fee's orders. Sometime later, we see the bright sun shining over the academy. Inside the office, Blair is thinking about his pure oxygen ball that cannot be launched immediately because it needs time to concentrate. At the moment, his biggest advantage is not needing to recite or make any gestures. He soon wonders if he can use multiple elements at once, but Isabel interrupts, saying he needs to study more on the subject that teacher Brittany assigned, handing over a paper. Our boy yawns. It shows that Blair has already written everything. The girl is impressed with such speed. Very calmly, the protagonist says he just needs to use different ways to solve each calculation. In other words, find the most ingenious solution possible. Isabel listens to every detail to learn more. Then the boy stands up, asking her something. How many fireballs can she summon at once? And the girl responds that at most 9 by Blair's face. This is totally absurd. Teasing the boy, Isabel says she knows he can only launch one at a time. Retorting, the protagonist says he didn't find anything about summoning more than one magic in the books. The girl explains that the books present basic theories and not specific magics, and adds that she only learned to launch multiple at once because her father hired a consultant. But if someone is willing to call her big sister, maybe she can teach. Without hesitation, Blair calls her big sister. The response was so quick that even Isabel didn't expect it. Then she calls him a thick-skinned pervert. Getting up from the chair, she asks Blair to follow her because she's going to show him how it's done. Outside the school, the two find themselves in a small field. Isabel casts the multiple fireball spell. In total, only 9 appear. After seeing this, the boy is impressed with such a skill. Besides the ability to keep them all stable, the girl says many mages think they only need to keep the magical spirit in one place. But actually, you can summon and manipulate them however you want depending on skill and experience. Concentrating, you can launch them at a single target at once. Blair asks if it's possible to control them all in different ways, and Isabel explains that it would be like drawing a circle with your right hand and a square with your left. The two laugh cheerfully as the conversation flows. Meanwhile, in the stalker's head, he thinks they are dating. Full of rage, he breaks the wall with a squeeze of his hand. This is Feige furious after the protagonist ignored his warning. He says that Blair will pay for all of this. Sometime later, our boy is training based on what Isabel said, dividing his mind into 9 independent parts. The girl tells him to do it gradually, not all at once. But it's fine if Blair can't do it, since it took her over 6 months. The ball in the boy's hand shines, releasing several sparks. Suddenly, multiple fireballs are summoned. She then screams, asking how Blair did that, raising his hand. Our boy says he did it using her method. For some reason, Isabel complains while the protagonist doesn't understand. He says he just followed what the girl said. In her mind, Isabel says this pervert is not just a genius in mathematics, but also in magic. A person who was once considered abandoned by the gods is now literally a gifted blessed one. Then she shouts, saying the protagonist took too long. She runs off, telling him not to look for her if he needs help with magic. Placing his hand on his face, Blair doesn't understand what he did wrong and thinks it's hard to understand women. Touching his pocket, he feels something strange. At that moment, Isabel is running, calling him a pervert with all her might. Blair suddenly grabs her hand. This startles her, making her extremely alert. She questions why he's pulling her, looking at the palm of the boy's hand. There is something like a teddy bear bracelet. Being polite and elegant, our big boy calls his dear Isabel and says he could only learn something thanks to her careful training. He then asks her to accept this gift as a token from her little brother. Her eyes light up when she sees it, something so cute given from the heart. This makes the girl blush with his gesture. In her mind, she says this pervert is good. Quickly, she takes the bracelet from his hand, then runs off, calling the bracelet ugly, but she ends up falling awkwardly on the ground. Even so, she gets up and looks back. Her gaze indicates uncertainty but also a pure consideration. The boy wonders if he should comfort her. In any case, she continues to run away, saying she will never forgive him. Our boy is lost in thought, saying that bracelet cost 50 silver coins. He was going to give it to his teacher but changed his mind and gave it to Isabel. Suddenly, Blair notices something. The people in question are Fee's henchmen. Bully says he remembers that the senior warned him about getting close to the girl. Even so, he continued to meet her. Blair gets up from the tall grass, but he is surrounded by the guys. Before anything, it's better to run than stay and die. The fools chase after him, telling the boy to stop. In his subconscious, he says this group of people is a problem. Bully shouts that Blair is like his father, fleeing the battlefield and still getting killed. After hearing this, the boy stops. The guy asks if he had a sore spot, then runs to attack him. When his punch is about to hit the protagonist, his hand burns, almost turning to ashes. With several fireballs in hand, the boy looks at everyone. Bully is severely injured because of Blair. The protagonist says that his father was a man who died fighting for this country. He is not just his father, but also a great hero. He then tells Bully not to insult him. The guys behind are scared after seeing that the protagonist made 9 fireballs. Then they run, leaving their accomplice behind like a superior being. Blair stands above Bully. Screaming, he asks the protagonist not to approach, because the academy restricts fights between students. Backing away, Bully tells Blair not to be impulsive. With an angry look, the boy says he should have said that earlier. When he moves to attack, he notices something. People are behind him. The boy screams for help, thinking he's about to die. But looking ahead, he sees the protagonist fallen. He pokes Blair to see if he's not dead. Without wasting time, he runs, leaving everyone behind. Brittany tells Bully to stop running. At the same moment, he says he didn't do anything and asks her to believe him because the protagonist fell on his own. Affectionately, she makes the boy see the skies. Blair is already red as he witnesses the true paradise. In a panic, Bully asks the teacher to listen to his explanation. Next to him, the guy yells about the situation. He then questions if the boy thinks they are blind and didn't see Blair fall at his feet. Then she tells Bully to go to her office. The guy apologizes to Vice President Calvin for him witnessing this, but apparently he doesn't care. Still, he says that something of this level cannot happen again. On her lap, Brittany notices that Blair's heartbeat has stopped. Later, we see that his soul tried to leave his body but couldn't, pulling him back. His teacher asks if the boy is okay. Then she hugs him, saying she was very worried. The voice draws their attention and says they will need a good explanation, but first they need to do something. Standing up, Brittany introduces them, and both are from the Mathematical Society. Very politely, our boy bows and salutes President Dean and Vice Calvin. Dean says that the protagonist is a genius for helping Brittany solve the Ross mystery. His teacher intervenes and says the mathematical problem and solution were entirely done by Blair. She only helped put it on paper. The men question if this is true, saying that if she claims it, she will receive many awards, and the society will help her as much as possible without concern for money. He adds that this will also help the academy. Brittany asks what will happen to Blair. Dean sighs upon hearing this. He says the boy is very young, and it's hard to believe he deciphered the Ross mystery. Blair takes her hand and nods for her to accept. Even so, Brittany hesitates about this. Dean gives them time to think about the offer. The teacher accepts the time given, and the two leave. Sunset arrives, ceasing to illuminate the area. Both walk down the corridor in complete silence. His teacher says that solving the Ross mystery doesn't help with development but is significant for history. And this honor belongs to the protagonist and you shouldn't let anyone else receive it. The boy's face is melancholic. He then says that it doesn't belong to him. Besides, she is not too old to accept something grand. After hearing this compliment, the woman's face brightens. Then the boy realizes he said something wrong again. All the students are looking at the board with various publications. The girl says that once again, Blair posted a new article with Miss Brittany, and it was the Ross mystery that even after years no scholar could solve. But of course, it was the teacher Brittany who did it since Blair is insignificant. Ignoring all the opinions, the protagonist only thinks about what he sent to his teacher. Nevertheless, he sighs because he can't do anything else. Blair hears some shouts from an adult man. Someone is saying that he's a piece of trash and only knows how to fight. The person is Bully's father, complaining that he didn't send him to school to fight. Then he loses his temper, saying that since he likes to fight, he will finish him right there. The beating hits and it certainly must have hurt. Right after that, the man apologizes for his son and begs for him not to be expelled. Dean says that Bully's behavior is not the best. His father falls to the ground, begging for his son not to be expelled. Bully asks his father not to humiliate himself like that. Our boy appears, calling the president. The man greets him and Blair also greets him. Then he asks what the problem is seeing the protagonist. Bully gets very angry and grits his teeth. Dean says the academy will expel him for violence and breaking rules. Someone touches the boy's sleeve. Kneeling, he also begs the protagonist and adds that when they get home, he will teach him a lesson. If he is expelled, Bully's life will be over. With a soft heart, our boy sighs. Then he tells the president that even though he had some small conflicts with Bully, he asks that he not be punished so severely. Everyone is silent. Looking at Bully's father, Dean says that because of the protagonist, the expulsion decision will be temporarily withdrawn. But if the boy does something like this again, there will be no second chance. The man takes his son's head and then says this won't happen. Bully thanks Dean. He also thanks Blair. His father goes home. Then the president asks us to go to the classroom. Our boy goes there and opens the door. Before that, Bully questions Blair's decision. He stands still without saying a word. With a serious tone, Blair tells the boy not to treat his father like that. Again, Bully thanks him. He continues, saying something about the boy from earlier, because Fee won't let the protagonist go so easily. After all, his uncle is the vice president of the academy. Later, Blair is tired from the day and still has to work. His employer is waiting for him. Our boy doesn't understand the reason for the wait. He asks if Blair had offended someone recently. Of course, this worries him, and he asks if something is wrong. Leaving that aside, the old man fires the protagonist and adds that he can no longer live there, because that's the order of the vice president. After the incident, his teacher says she will take Blair and Isabel on an exchange trip. Then she asks if the boy will be busy tomorrow. Blair apologizes, saying he will have to find a place to stay since he was expelled from the library. Simply and directly, Brittany says he can stay at her house since she has a spare room and lives alone. After thinking about it, the protagonist has visions of libidinous things, but he says it's not very convenient. Like a good adult, she says there's a big advantage since he can ask math questions anytime. Then, a bit embarrassed, Blair accepts the invitation. Isabel arrives and immediately questions why Blair is present. Brittany explains everything, and also says the boy will live with her. This makes Isabel angry since, in her mind, the protagonist is still a pervert. But her teacher rebukes her, saying Blair is not that kind of person, and Isabel says she's just worried. Meanwhile, our boy is disheartened since he's gaining a reputation as a pervert. The two joke a bit, and Brittany asks Isabel to get ready for the exchange meeting. Looking back, she asks Blair to come in formal attire since the exchange will be at a seminar. Our boy asks if he can go in his magical worker's uniform. Waving goodbye, she says if he has one, he can use it. At night at the mansion, where the exchange meeting will take place, the three stand admiring the wonderful view. Everyone came in their best clothes, and Blair tried not to fall behind. Brittany introduces the mansion as belonging to the Howard family, the permanent exchange residents. Even in all the kingdoms, this family is respected for their skill and knowledge in mathematics. Seeing the crowd and the people around, he connects the dots between the Howards and the Fee House. Vice President Calvin is talking to the visitors. Our dear great teacher catches his attention. He welcomes the three of them. Blair says hello, and meanwhile, Isabel asks how long the boy has known the vice president. The man says he was talking to some important people and asks if Brittany would like to meet them. At the same moment, she asks the two to go ahead. Both enter the mansion where there are various delicious foods. Wasting no time, the boy attacks the first dish. Then he stuffs himself and Isabel shouts, asking if he's a pig. She complains that the teacher didn't call them to eat, and then drags Blair away. Looking at the wall, the protagonist notices something, a giant painting with a strange drawing in the middle. Isabel says these are the 7 points of the royal capital, of which the whole Howard family is proud. Our boy asks what these 7 points are. The guy arrives, humiliating Blair for not knowing, and adds that he will fight with the guards for letting someone of such low level, and the girl tells Feige to watch his words. Even so, the guy continues, saying the boy doesn't even deserve to eat the food there. Isabel takes the protagonist's hand and asks him to ignore the insults. Of course, the jerk gets angry after seeing this scene. In his mind, the girl is only his, and no one can hold her hand. To taunt Blair, he asks if he is going to hide behind a woman, going towards the guy. Our boy questions Feige about the 7 points of the capital. She tries to stop Blair from doing something wrong. With a serious face, the protagonist shows great interest in the 7 points of the capital. Smiling, Feige asks if the boy really thinks he is a math genius. Isabel complains about this behavior, and while the guy says he wants to know the new mathematical ideas Blair has, then he shouts, alerting everyone that the protagonist is going to solve the 7 points of the capital. The girl is incredulous at this and doesn't know what to do. All the nobles believe that Brittany solved the Ross mystery and that the protagonist forced her to put his name on it. His teacher is also present and notices the commotion. Feige asks Blair not to disappoint the nobles. Suddenly, someone grabs the boy's hand. It's Brittany, but the protagonist doesn't understand why she is there. She questions the reason for the conflict, since the Howard family is the most powerful in Apollo City. This could make things difficult for him in the world of mathematics and even at the academy. Moreover, it's impossible to solve the 7 points of the capital, and Feige knows this, which is why he threw this problem at Blair. The boy gets Brittany's attention and she looks to the side. Raising his glass, he asks if the boy isn't a great mathematician and questions if he lacks confidence. Furious, the woman was about to try something against Feige, but the protagonist stops her, saying he will try to solve the equation as a way to thank his senior for expelling him from the library. Both women are surprised by such a statement, because if Blair says he will do it, he will certainly keep his word. He turns to Feige, saying he will solve the 7 points of the capital. Feige explains that this is an equation that only the patriarch of the first generation managed to solve. Hundreds of years ago, he noticed a special topography of the capital. At that time, the urban area wasn't as large as it is today, and the city was divided in two by the river. Because of this, the patriarch created 7 bridges to connect the urban region. Looking at his creation, he had a brilliant idea. It was possible to go to any area crossing each bridge only once and then return to the starting point without repeating the path. After making the idea public, many mathematicians researched to try to find the solution. However, despite numerous attempts, no one found the answer. In the end, the patriarch solved it and was supposed to publish it for the entire kingdom the next day. But the whole day passed and he didn't appear, and night fell. Days later, they found his body in the river. Because of this, the answer was lost and no one from the new or old generation succeeded. Even so, the Howard family celebrates the patriarch's great achievement. This is the great glory of the entire family. Not much time passes after the explanation, and Blair seems to have already found the answer. Feige asks if the genius can find the solution. Surprisingly, the protagonist says he doesn't know. Feige laughs and questions where all the bravery went. The women ask if they heard correctly and compliment that Blair is a piece of trash and nothing but a waste. But a distinguished woman says maybe it isn't like that. Apparently, the protagonist tries to find the answer, but he realizes there is no solution, because in his past life, there was a similar problem. The whole room is watching Blair intently. Both Brittany and Isabel don't understand anything. Phoebe says the boy only says this because he doesn't know the answer, but the first patriarch of his family knew the solution. Blair refutes, asking if he has any evidence of this supposed solution. Phoebe loses his composure, questioning how the boy could doubt the sages. A man appears, telling Phoebe to stop. His name is Viscount Howard, and he says not to use the achievements of the past generation to show off. At that moment, Phoebe trembles, apologizing to his father. The man says he heard a lot about Blair from Calvin. Our boy greets him respectfully. The Viscount says he knows about the conflict with Phoebe and promptly apologizes, but he accuses family, saying the 7 points of the capital have no solution. Blair says he didn't accuse them because the problem truly has no solution. Beside him, Isabel says it's the first time she sees the boy so serious. The man becomes as furious as his son after hearing these statements. Against all odds, he says he has the evidence. Grabbing a paper and pen, he starts writing down the reasoning and the basis of the bridges. He then asks them to look. Each piece of land is considered a point. If you can connect all the points without drawing a line over another and without lifting the pencil from the paper, it's as if you walk through all the bridges. Four Eyes are impressed, and the Viscount's wife says it's wonderful. A blonde woman says her friend is right. The boy really has a good brain. For some reason, she seems proud. Blair continues the explanation, saying one can only leave the bridges using the start or the end. A point formed by even numbers can be called a uniform point. Brittany adds, saying that if all the numbers are even, the 7 points of the capital can be resolved. Observing from afar, the boy continues seriously and says his teacher is correct. Four Eyes tries to question something, but the final definition is that it is impossible to reach the end and then return to the start without repeating the 7 bridges. In short, it's impossible to solve. The onlookers are left speechless after hearing this. Blair says this is a 100% impeccable argument. Phoebe says this is all nonsense. The family is being plagued by noble gossip. He yells, telling everyone not to believe Blair. But of course, after this absurd argument, everyone looks at him with disdain. A woman says that the Howard family patriarchs deceived scholars for centuries. Because of this statement, Phoebe's mind collapses. He then looks at his father, asking if he's not going to do something, but the Viscount doesn't wait for good news and punches his son in the cheek. Phoebe falls to the ground, all battered by the blow. Then the man tells Phoebe to shut up because he is a failure, and adds that the boy is a disgrace. From the corner of his eye, the man says he will make Blair pay for what he did. Our boy doesn't understand the reason for the resentment, but it seems the Viscount won't let this slide. Still, Blair calls him out, saying that he answered one of Phoebe's questions, and as one of the house rules, the boy should also answer one of his. Seeing his son on the ground, the Viscount realizes there's nothing to do, so he asks what the boy will say. Directly, Blair says it's simple and asks what the length of the diagonal of the square is. After hearing this, the Viscount is happy since his family is also famous for solving this kind of problem. His teacher questions the reason for such an easy question. The man replies that it's 2 and adds that this is common knowledge. Closing his eyes, our boy says the answer is wrong. He then says he wants to know the length of the actual diagonal. The Viscount is left speechless. The crowd starts gossiping about the matter. Of course, Blair knows the man won't answer. Although in his world, scientists were respected, most were unknown, and the public only cared about celebrity scandals. Even though not many know about mathematics, there are only high-level people here. The students present have contributed significantly, so it doesn't matter if they are noble or not. It turned out that they gathered and formed the School of Numbers. Everyone in the Howard family has great influence because it's the center of the academy, and even Isabel's father, the lord of the city, must show respect to them. This school integrates everything possible to deliver maximum knowledge to students. They believe that all mystical events can be discovered through numbers. Practically, it's like the ancient Pythagorean school founded by Pythagoras. It was once very powerful, but had a fatal flaw in its belief. In summary, everyone in this world believes only in whole numbers, like Pythagoras. The person who discovered decimal numbers was his student named Sapassos while trying to measure a diagonal. After this discovery, the school was shaken, leading to its end. The sect's believers were horrified by this, so they decided to tie Sapassos up and throw him into the Aegean Sea. However, the truth cannot be hidden forever, and soon their descendants discovered it. Subsequent generations called these numbers irrational numbers. Soon human understanding expanded. Judging by the Viscount's expression, he must know about the existence of irrational numbers. But we see the man is sweating. Everyone is trying to find the correct number for the diagonal. Brittany asks, what the hell? This is because even she can't find it. Then the boy explains to her that this is a new number discovered long ago, but may have been covered up by others at the time. Phoebe sees his father's powerless image. Seeing that, he knows that perhaps today he won't leave with all his teeth. This elevates his anger toward Blair. Then he shouts, saying all this happened because of him. Therefore, he must die immediately. He then runs towards the boy to attack him. Preparing himself, Blair positions to avoid being hit. Before anything happens, someone grabs his hand. With pure rage, she observes him. Feige yells for her to let go, but the woman apologizes and says she must stop the boy from doing something impulsive. Still, the boy tries to free his arm, but he realizes she is too strong. Behind him, his father yells furiously. Trembling, the Viscount asks if he knows how many misfortunes he caused today. The boy remains silent but continues to stare at Blair. Quickly, the man calls everyone's attention. He then says he deeply regrets this terrible incident and promises that from now on, he will discipline his son thoroughly. Additionally, regarding Blair's question, he will send the answer in a few days. He thanks everyone for their guidance and takes his leave, telling Blair to enjoy himself at the mansion tonight. In his mind, the boy knows it will be difficult to find the answer, but he trusts the Howards. Leaving, the Viscount is unsatisfied with everything as he was humiliated by a child. Blair thanks the lady who helped him. The woman asks if he has forgotten her. Isabel appears, hitting our boy. Then she asks how he could flirt with another person besides her, and of course, Blair doesn't understand a word of what she said. The woman lets out a relaxed smile. She then says she was joking, but it's admirable how the girl flirts. She adds that the relationship between the two is so close it's enviable. Isabel tries to retort to Alice but ends up fumbling her words. Then she questions the reason for her presence. Alice responds that she has always participated in meetings like this, but it's the first time she's seen Isabel here. Brittany says that Alice's family is famous in the city of Yapo, and she always attends exchange meetings as a representative. Extending her hand, the woman reintroduces herself to Blair. They both greet each other and exchange jokes. Alice leans in a bit to observe the boy closely. She then seductively asks if she could inquire about mathematical questions alone with him in the future. Blair swiftly refuses after hearing her question. With a stern and dumbfounded face, he reiterates his rejection with more respect. He explains that she should discuss such problems with Miss Brittany since he claims that his ideas are inspired by her. Alice chuckles for a bit and calls him unpredictable. She then proceeds to bid goodbye as she tells him that they should have a good chat when there is no one around him next time. Once she leaves, Isabella starts to pout and gets mad about Alice trying to seduce Blair while Brittany simply waves her goodbye. Isabella also scolds Blair for almost being seduced and accuses him of wanting to follow her. He defends himself by telling her that there is no reason for him to follow her. She nags him and says that he is just like every boy that gets all excited when pretty girls approach them. Blair rebuts and asks her smoothly if Alice is as beautiful as her. She blushes at his question and also asks him if he thinks that Alice is prettier. He bluntly replies that he thinks Isabella is prettier, which makes her flustered and unable to talk back anymore. Blair thinks to himself that she is being too persistent and that his answer was truthful since they were talking about the face and not the body. While Isabella is elated by their exchange, a person suddenly approaches and greets them. The man is Vice President Calvin, so Brittany asks why he came. Calvin states that the three of them are the talk of the party, so he had to come to see what the ruckus was all about. Blair tells him that he is over-exaggerating and that he was simply helping to solve the problem that was presented, then asks questions afterward. The vice president informs him that the problems he solved and the questions he raised weren't simple at all. Solving the 7 bridges of the royal capital has been the greatest honor of the Howard family, but his argument today could lead to their fall. And the number he mentioned could also cause the number school to fall since it directly goes against their foundations, which would shake the entire mathematics community. He then sharply focuses his gaze on him and asks who he really is, since there must be a reason that such talent was only recently revealed. His suspicions grow and he also inquires about his purpose, which takes them aback. But Blair simply brushes his questions off and tells him that it was Senior Feige who took the initiative to ask the question and he simply had an idea, so he helped him answer it, adding that the number he inquired about was only due to curiosity and that the Viscount already told them that he could find the number. Calvin thinks deeply and decides to believe Blair's statements, then assures him that the Mathematical Society is always on the side of the truth. As Blair was feeling relieved that he managed to escape his questions, the vice president raises a warning to him. He ominously states that he should be careful of the Howards since they are a lot of trouble to deal with. The scene cuts to the Viscount sitting calmly on a sofa while Fiji is shivering on the floor after seemingly being beaten. He struggles to catch his breath as his body is covered with bruises. An ominous man informs the Viscount that everything is now ready and they can execute the plan at any time. The Viscount orders the man to wait until Blair leaves the manor and make his death look like an accident, just like how they did before. The ominous man bows and follows his orders. But suddenly a voice talks to the Viscount and calls him father, stating that he is planning to kill again. Behind them, there is a mysterious man dressed in white that they haven't noticed yet. The Viscount looks behind him and recognizes the man as his son Abel. He then asks why he is still alive after all this time, but he stays silent. The assassin says that it's impossible that he lives since he made sure he was dead, though Abel ignores him and tells the Viscount that it's normal that he didn't expect him to be alive, since he knew that his father is the one that gave the order, like how he is doing right now. The Viscount flies into a rage and accuses him of conspiring with Blair, but Abel simply criticizes him for being cruel to his kin even to this day. His father pulls out a flintlock gun and threatens to shoot him if he does not tell his true goal while Feege regains his consciousness. Abel finally speaks up and states that the Viscount always asks too many questions that he does not know where to start. He stands up while saying that he will explain, that the young man named Blair does not have connections to him whatsoever, but he provided him a good opportunity to finally come back to the family. The reason he came back, however, is to change the entire Howard family from the ground up. The Viscount is puzzled by his goals and questions if he really plans to change the family. Abel confirms his question and asks what the current cornerstones of the family are. His father states that it is honor, which his son sternly denies, and that his words are nothing but lies. The Viscount is irritated and asks why that is. Abel answers that it is due to the fact that the Viscount already knew that the Seven Bridges mystery has no solution and the number Blair stated cannot be expressed in real numbers. He adds,
Я не могу, но достану звезду. Я не могу, но я знаю, куда иду. Я не смогу, это слова неуверенности. Нет, ты не слушай, иди вдоль своей преданности. Преданность, 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 преданность. Преданность. Я слушаю свое сердце, как оно бьется. Ему не имется, но кроме как смотреть в оконце, краше посмотреть.
That the Viscount also hid the truth in order to maintain the so-called honor of the family and the number school. And not only that, he also killed those who wanted to reveal the truth to the public in various ways, which included Abel, his own biological son. Viscount Howard has now snapped and orders him to stop talking, and states that he will kill him once again for the sake of the family. Abel persuades his father by reminding him of what he said, that the truth will come out sooner or later, which will lead to the Howard family being wiped out. And today the boy named Blair did just that and burst their family's bubble in front of the entire mathematics community. He then challenges him if he can get rid of all the people who now know the truth. Abel swiftly grabs the Viscount's gun, then points it to his own heart while taunting his father that if he can't hide the truth tomorrow, everyone will know their secrets and the family will be overthrown. The Viscount's hand shakes in the face of Abel's continuous threats. He then finally lets go of his gun in resignation as his son takes it from him. Viscount Howard desperately asks Abel what they can do in order to prevent such a future. His son answers, saying that he will replace him as the patriarch and change the entire Howard family so that they can survive. He menacingly tells his father that only he himself can save the entire family. The Viscount becomes silent after being taken aback by his statement, then breaks out in cold sweat once his son whispers his plans to him. A few days later at Brittany's residence, Blair wakes up from his slumber to an obnoxiously loud alarm clock by his bed. He revels at the fact that he can now sleep in a cozy bed with no odors, unlike the utility room where he used to stay. Blair heads outside of his room while being half awake and goes to greet Brittany good morning. But he notices something in her room. There is a pile of papers arranged on her desk. He is shocked at the sheer amount of papers she wrote and realizes that Brittany stayed up late last night trying to calculate the number once again. Since after the mathematics exchange meeting, there have been questions over the Howard family's credibility due to the truth he revealed regarding the Seven Bridges mystery. However, what's even more shocking is the number he mentioned that cannot be expressed using rational numbers, leading others to call it the devil's number. And almost all of the scholars have been trying to figure out the number, but they can't express it no matter how hard they try. Blair thinks that it is only natural, since it is impossible to express it using rational numbers, and that irrational numbers are a foreign field, which this world has never explored. But even so, he respects the efforts of the scholars of this world, and he believes that they will figure out their solution eventually, just like in his own world. As he looks forward to the future, a dove flies in the distance, signaling a new chapter in his life. Blair takes a look at the papers on the desk and sees something that catches his attention. It is a newspaper containing news about the Howard family changing their patriarch, and the new patriarch has also announced that he will dissolve the number school. Blair thinks that abandoning the school is indeed the best choice for the Howard family and wonders what suddenly changed inside the family for them to react so decisively. As he imagines what the new patriarch might look like, Brittany walks up from behind while lightly dressed. She says good morning to Blair while she rubs her face, seemingly still half awake. He returns her greeting while looking enamored at her seductive figure before him, though she doesn't seem to realize how lightly dressed she is. She also scolds Blair for not waking her up like she told him to do last night, to which he simply states that he forgot to do so while trying to avoid looking at her body. Brittany teases him and calls him a bad boy, causing him to become flustered. She adds that she knows that he didn't really forget, and also seductively states that she also knows that he knows the number, and sweetly tells him to stop teasing her, with her breasts nearly popping out, which causes Blair to have a nosebleed. Brittany notices that his nose is bleeding and finally realizes what she is wearing. She becomes frozen in embarrassment, then proceeds to slap Blair in the face, calling him a pervert. After their awkward interaction, they then head to the kitchen for Blair to make breakfast while having her handprint on his cheek. Brittany feels a bit of guilt for slapping him and apologizes to him, saying that it was a subconscious reaction from her. Blair points out that she has a different personality after waking up, causing her to become a bit embarrassed. So she asks if she is annoying when she just woke up, but is surprised when Blair answers no, nonchalantly adding that he doesn't dislike her either way, causing Brittany to blush a bit after hearing his answer. She then thanks him for understanding, while Blair feels proud of himself for smoothly diffusing the situation. As he cooks their breakfast, Brittany asks why he is mixing the red fruits with the eggs, so he answers by telling her that he is making scrambled eggs. She is confused since she doesn't know what he is talking about, as it doesn't exist in their world yet. He finishes cooking and sets the delicious eggs onto the plate. As he finishes up the dish, he explains that the red fruits are called tomatoes, which are used to make everyone's favorite scrambled eggs in his hometown. He also remembers that this is also the dish he always used to make. After making breakfast, Blair heads to his class and tells her to try it herself. Brittany asks him to wait for a bit, then she wipes a stain on his shirt with a clean cloth. Blair is suddenly taken aback since he didn't expect her to get this close and proceeds to blush while frozen in place. She finishes cleaning his shirt, and it is now sparkling clean. Brittany then reminds him to be careful as he goes off to school. After Blair leaves, she's left alone at the table, wondering if the eggs are really edible due to their weird appearance. She takes a spoonful of the eggs and tries it out, and becomes shocked at its taste. The fragrance of the eggs makes her mouth water, and the sweetness of the tomato that is fresh and refreshing causes her to curl her feet in delight. She shivers as she revels in the taste of the scrambled eggs, which is out of this world for her. Meanwhile, Blair's stomach is grumbling at school, since he forgot to eat breakfast after leaving so early in the morning. In class, the girls are talking about the new head of the Howard family and praise his good looks. They also talk about the mysterious person who solved the 7 bridges and proposed the devil's number before disappearing. One of the girls states she heard from her uncle that the boy who solved it is the same age as them and also requested to stay anonymous. The blonde girl states that she can't believe that the one who shook the entire mathematics community is the same age as them. And if she had to guess, then the person must have been an old man. While the girls are gossiping in the background, Isabella asks Blair if he really doesn't know how to express the devil's number. Blair answers nonchalantly that he doesn't know everything, and that he already said everything he knows. She frustratedly slams her hand onto the desk as she accuses him of lying once again, but someone suddenly tells her off for troubling Blair. The person is Alice, who has just recently entered the room and greets them good morning. She also sends a flying kiss at Blair, which takes him by surprise. Isabella asks her why she is here since she is a 3rd year, while Blair returns her greeting kindly. The other boys notice the 2 beauties of the school and become jealous of his luck, causing the boy with freckles to also wonder why he is suddenly in luck. Jasmine also notices the pretty girls and looks back at them. Alice suddenly gets close to Blair and asks about the devil's number, causing him to become nervous due to their proximity. His stomach rumbles loudly once again due to his nervousness, which made him embarrassed as the others were taken aback. He apologizes for his stomach suddenly grumbling. Alice softly grins at his embarrassment, while Isabella calls him a pig for being so hungry this early in the morning. Alice pulls out a delicious-looking bread and presents it to Blair. She states that she accidentally brought extra lunch and asks him to help her finish it. Blair's mouth waters after seeing the bread in front of him. He finally resigns and decides to accept it, as he thanks Alice for the bread and calls her a good friend. Isabella pulls on his cheek and stops him from eating the bread he got, and scolds him for accepting food from strangers. Blair tells her that he tried to reject her, but the bread looked too delicious to pass by. She gets even more mad and states that he should have asked her first for food. He rebuts and says that she'd just call him a pig again if he asked for food, to which Isabella shouts at him saying that she doesn't care. Alice interrupts their conversation, stating that it is only natural for her to give him assistance since he is a once-in-a-lifetime genius. Isabella gets irritated by her statement and decides to hand Blair an extra bread that she just so happens to have brought, adding that he should just return the bread he got from Alice. Blair becomes a bit confused at her sudden kindness. Alice teases her for interfering with his choice and points out that they are not in such a relationship for her to be jealous. Isabella gets even more irritated at the details she pointed out and tells Blair that he should make a choice to choose between her and Alice's bread, and he can only choose one. Alice comforts him and tells him that it's okay to choose what he likes even if it's hers. Tensions rise as the 2 girls stare down at each other, with Blair unable to have a quiet meal. As the 2 antagonize each other, Blair struggles to find a way to defuse the situation. He decides to accept Isabella's bread and takes it from her hand. She shows off and celebrates that her bread is better than Alice's, who is now also irritated. But Blair shoves both pieces of bread in his mouth. As he tries to swallow the bread, he starts to sweat profusely and almost chokes in the process. The bread finally reaches his throat and starts to go down to his stomach. He successfully ate both pieces of bread and complimented the 2 for their delicious bread, with tears running down his face. His classmates who witnessed the scene are starting to worry about him due to the stunt he just pulled. Isabella gets all elated thinking that he wolfed down her bread due to its deliciousness. On the other hand, Alice wipes off a crumb of bread on Blair's face and starts to put it in her mouth while seductively looking at him. As she licks the crumbs off her finger, she also lightly scolds Blair for being careless. Isabella is now engulfed in the flames of her own anger due to Alice flirting with Blair. Suddenly, the bell rings and Alice realizes that it's time for class. She then bids goodbye to Blair. He returns it as well while looking like a pervert. Isabella notices his perverted gaze and points at him, menacingly stating that she will wait for him after class, to which he has no choice but to agree. Isabella then gets out of the room and slams the door in rage. Blair is now relieved after the two girls left and breathes a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a big hand pinches his cheek while calling his name. It was Toby, and he asks when he got to know Alice. Blair answers that he met her the other night. Toby becomes surprised that he met her at night and misunderstands the situation. Blair clears it up by telling him that he met her at an academic conference of the Math Association that Miss Brittany took him to. Toby remembers the news about the conference and asks him if it was the one where the devil's number was uncovered, but Blair interrupts and tells him that Brittany has arrived. During class, he once again solves the problems on the board with ease. Brittany tells the class that it's time for them to discuss the question on the blackboard with their respective groups. She then whispers to Blair and hands him a piece of bread, so he asks what it is for. She tells him that it's for his breakfast since he didn't eat in the morning. He sweats profusely at the thought of eating bread again after munching down on it earlier. Blair then heads to his group for the discussion. Toby asks why he has bread again after seeing it in his hands. He avoids the question and decides to have the discussion first, but a girl in his group suddenly slams the desk with her hands. The pink-haired girl who slammed the desk then asks Blair who the mysterious man at the conference was, since she heard from Toby that he was present that day. He looks over at Toby, who is avoiding his gaze as he tries to brush off her question by saying that he only sort of saw the person. The pink-haired girl asks how he sort of saw him. Meanwhile, Jasmine seems to be thinking of something. Blair explains that he was absent when the mysterious man stood up. Then when he got back, the venue was a mess and he couldn't find the man anywhere. The girl asks why he left the venue at such an important moment. He answers with an excuse, saying that he had diarrhea from eating too much, which made all of them silent. Toby states while picking his nose that he can't believe that he wasted such a good chance. The girl tells him off, saying that it was enough that Blair was able to be qualified to attend such an event since only rich or noble people can attend it. She also requests Blair to go to her house to be a math tutor since she still has a lot of questions, and if he gets tired then he can easily rest in their big manor. Toby is skeptical of her intentions and asks if she really just wants to learn math, which makes her angry, and she states that she is just studious. Meanwhile, Jasmine looks at them, appearing all irritated. Time passes, and it's finally time for the bells to ring again, signaling for the classes to end. Blair lets out a deep breath after managing to evade Isabella after class, and decides to practice magic in the meantime. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him and asks when he was so interested in practicing magic. He wonders who it is and spots a hooded figure in front of him. Then the person lunges a knife at him from nowhere. While the knife is aimed at his neck, he asks who the person threatening him is. The person in front of him is a blue-haired woman wearing a hoodie to conceal her identity. This person is revealed to be Jasmine, and she orders him not to move since the dagger she is holding is very sharp. Blair asks what compelled her to do such a thing, but she interrupts him midway. She then states that Blair is the one who solved the 7 bridges and proposed the devil's number, so she wonders why his math and magic powers have grown rapidly. Jasmine yells at him and accuses him of impersonating Blair since he has all that talent that he previously didn't have. Blair finally speaks and tells her that she has so many questions to the point that he doesn't even know where to start, so he introduces himself again. As he thinks that he should mention that he came from another world, Jasmine suddenly pulls his cheeks after mistakenly thinking that he has a disguise. She states that his disguise will be revealed with her technique, no matter how perfect it is. But she is met with surprise, since his face was still normal even after she applied her technique, with only his face hurting as a result. Blair kicks her foot in retaliation, causing her to stumble and fall towards the ground. She panics after she loses her footing and realizes that she is going to fall, so she simply braces for the oncoming impact. But surprisingly, she stopped falling as her eyes opened, since Blair managed to catch her right before she was about to fall. She blushes for a bit seeing the close distance between them, though Blair keeps a straight face unfazed. Jasmine snaps out of it and finally tells him to let go, so he complies as per her request. But in return, he orders her not to point the spoon he previously mistook for a dagger at his neck. He also firmly states that he really is Blair. Jasmine is still flustered and says that he should let go before anything else. After he lets go, she asks how he is suddenly so gifted with magic and math and also speaks very differently from the original Blair despite not having a disguise. He explains that he really is Blair but not the same one she knows and that he only woke up like that after a long dream. Blair starts to tell her about his original world and how it has no magic but very advanced technology. The people in his world didn't know how to use magic since they only saw it as fiction and nothing else. But instead, the science and technology in that world skyrocketed even beyond magic, and people can use various technological creations to complete tasks that magic cannot. Relying on that advanced technology, their people also extended their exploration outside the planet and can travel through the stars and reach other planets. In that world, he was only a math teacher, which is the source of all the advanced mathematical knowledge he knows. During his class, one of the girls that resembled Jasmine raised her hand to ask a question, so he entertained it. The student asked if the starry skies could really be traversed, and if so, are there other planets beyond the stars? He answered the question properly, stating that they can indeed travel through the starry sky and that there are also countless planets in the universe. Though he answered properly, the students still made fun of him for being a lame teacher, which embarrassed him to the point that he didn't know what to say next. As he remembered the past, the sun was slowly starting to go down outside the building. The light from the windows slowly went down as a sign that the moon was about to come out. Blair apologizes to Jasmine after he cut his past short, saying that he woke up after that long ordeal and simply woke up with his current talent for math and magic, and that he also lost some of his memory, which makes Jasmine look a bit worried about him. He finishes all of his explanations, so now it is her turn to talk. But she has nothing more to say, other than she now believes that he truly is Blair, which also seemed to talk about the same stuff he said from before. He asks her if he really said such things before, and she confirms, saying that he was more interested in science than magic back then. She also tells him that the past Blair also wished to live in a world without magic, partly due to his lack of magical talent. She believes that Blair has amnesia and assures him that she'll help him regain his memories. Blair goes along with her and thanks her for all of her help while shaking her hand. This causes her to become flustered. She panics and blurts out that she promises to bring his memories back so he can rest easy. Sometime later inside the academy, Blair is walking in the hallway. Then he stops to think about something deeply, but someone suddenly grabs him from behind. It's his friend Toby, and he also pulls him off the floor. They quarrel for a bit while Toby grabs him tightly, but someone approaches them from a distance. Blair notices the man stalking them and asks him to introduce himself. He also manages to escape from Toby, so he punctures his nose with his 2 fingers. The man who was watching them is Senior Feige, which Toby quickly recognizes, so he asks what he is scheming again since he is being very suspicious. But Feige simply bows his head to them and apologizes for his mistakes back at the manor. He states that he sincerely apologizes and asks him to be able to forgive his wrongdoings. The other students see the scene and wonder what's happening. Blair also wonders and asks what he should forgive him for since he genuinely does not remember, which causes the girls in the crowd to start speculating why Feige is suddenly apologizing. Senior Feige hands him something, stating that his brother, who is the new patriarch, wanted to give it to him as an invitation, since he is going to hold an explanatory meeting for the entire kingdom's mathematics community tonight. As he bows down to Blair, he is filled with frustration, but he keeps it hidden as he tries to get Blair to come to the meeting. Toby advises him not to go since he speculates that the senior is up to no good again. Blair thinks for a bit after reading the invitation, but he ultimately decides to go to the mansion despite the risks. At the meeting, it is full of rich-looking people who each have their own conversations with someone. Blair is intimidated by the massive mansion, but he decides to follow through due to his curiosity. Suddenly, someone pinches his ear, which startles him with pain. He realizes that it was none other than Isabella, who happened to just arrive at the conference, and she scolds him for not waiting for her in the classroom. Miss Brittany also arrives and is also surprised that he came as well. With her full seductive body in view, she tells him that they were looking for him at the academy earlier. Blair asks if she also received the invitation. She states that there has been news that the Howard family will hold a meeting this night, so it was only natural that she and almost all of the mathematics community would come. And that almost all of the people in the math circle came, but no one received an invitation like he did. Blair finds it strange that he is the only one to receive an invitation, so he wonders what it's for. But someone suddenly interrupts him and plays with his ear, which causes his face to turn red. It's Alice, who also attended the event, and she rubs his ear while making fun of Isabella, which makes her mad in more ways than one. Isabella glares at Alice and tells her that she obviously didn't put any force in pulling his ear, but she says that it's all red, so it must have hurt. Blair gets nervous after seeing the two face off again and braces for impact. But Miss Brittany interrupts their scuffle, and she asks all of them to come to the briefing, though they are still glaring at each other. As they walk into the venue, Blair suddenly notices something on the wall. It's that the Seven Bridges painting has been taken down, leaving only a blank picture frame behind. Brittany looks at the empty frame and wonders what Abel did to solve the current situation. Blair asks her if she knows Abel since she mentioned his name, but she says that it was nothing deep, and that she only used to be classmates with Abel, and he was also going to become a teacher in the academy, but he suddenly disappeared 3 years ago. She was also surprised when she learned that he was the new head of the Howard family, which made Blair ask what kind of person Abel is. Brittany thinks for a bit, then she answers that he was a person who only had mathematics in his eyes. In a room inside the mansion, Abel sits at his desk while looking at some paperwork. Feige informs him that everyone has arrived and is waiting for him to show up at the venue. But Abel simply tells his brother that he has never been in love since he doesn't know that being late to a date increases their date's expectations. He also asks Feige if the man he talked about arrived. Feige anxiously answers, saying that there were so many people, so he couldn't really be sure if Blair was there. Abel puts his hand on his brother's shoulder and assures him that he is not like their father, so he doesn't need to be afraid anymore. He then tells him that they should now go to the venue, in order for them to start a new chapter in the Howard family. At the main venue, there are crowds of people socializing. Suddenly, a man spots someone in the distance. It is the Howard brothers, which causes him to announce to everyone that they have finally arrived. Despite having a large audience, Abel still walks gracefully and as calm as a rock while his brother nervously struts behind him. The people at the venue look at the new head and realize that he is still very young. Abel then starts off the meeting by greeting the guests, stating that he is thankful to them for coming for the briefing. He introduces himself as Abel Howard and respectfully bows down before the guests while also thanking them. Brittany notices that Abel has changed from 3 years ago in both dress and speech. Abel pulls out a book from his coat and tells the audience that he will get to the point quickly, since they have been waiting for so long already, though he states that he will open up about his family's past first. Blair notices the book he is holding in his hand and wonders what the book contains. Abel states that this book contains a note from the first patriarch of the Howard family, which entails the truth that has been hidden by their family for so long. The note states that the first patriarch tried to solve the Seven Bridges mystery back then by repeatedly walking the 7 bridges like the other scholars at the time. Although he didn't find a solution for a long time, the first patriarch was fully determined not to give up. But one day, he discovered that he had successfully completed a non-repetitive move. This caused him to announce his success on the spot and promise everyone that he would demonstrate the moves he made the following morning. The first patriarch was so proud at that time, so much so that he didn't verify his findings first before announcing to the public. But during the night, when he came to the bridge to confirm his findings, he finally realized that he had made a crucial mistake. It's the fact that he didn't succeed in finding a solution but only misremembered the route he took, which caused him to think that he found a route with no repetition. He realized that he would become a laughingstock in the morning after making such a tragic mistake. So he committed suicide due to his great shame and in order to atone for his mistake to the public. And at the same time, he also left a note which recorded his mistaken findings in detail and asked future generations to clarify the facts to the public on his behalf. But his descendants did not follow his orders and instead hid the notes from the public, making it seem that the patriarch accidentally fell into the water with all the proof he had. They did all that in order to maintain the so-called honor of the family until today. After telling the story, Abel stands resolute in front of the large audience, telling all of them that the truth cannot be hidden forever and that the Howard family will face the truth and the backlash that they will receive. He then humbly bows again to ask for their forgiveness. Feige is shocked at his brother's bravery and attempts to stop him, but he quickly changes his mind. Abel clearly apologizes to everyone on behalf of the whole Howard family. The people in the meeting are shocked at his revelation, and they start talking among themselves. Blair sees his decision on the matter and deduces that the new patriarch is very decisive, saying that the Howard family lied about the 7 Bridges mystery. He is impressed to see that Abel actually revealed the truth, which will cause more responsibility for future generations, but the first patriarch's honor was preserved. The lady with the top hat asks if Abel disbanded the numbers fraction a few days ago as atonement for the family's lie. The new patriarch informs her that it was indeed a form of atonement, but there is a different main reason, which was the so-called devil's number. The lady asks if he still hasn't found the number yet. Abel answers, saying that they haven't found the number yet, but it's not because of the limitation of his abilities. He announced that it is due to the fact that the devil's number does not exist, which surprised Blair. The other guests ask him to clarify what he just said. Abel tells them that the number doesn't exist in their existing mathematical cognition system, which was also the reason why he disbanded the numbers sect. A nerdy boy from the crowd asks if the devil's number is incomprehensible. Abel reveals that the devil's number isn't unsolvable at all, but instead, it is a whole new area that the mathematics group still hasn't explored yet. He states that the solution for the community to solve this mystery is to question the one who proposed the number in the first place, which is Blair from Street Donna's Academy. The crowd starts talking among themselves once again as they wonder who Blair really is. Abel continues his statements and says that they don't recognize Blair since he is very humble with his discoveries, so he asked everyone to hide his name. But Abel firmly tells them that they need Blair to step up and lead them in order to greatly improve the mathematics community. Brittany looks behind her to talk to Blair and asks him what he plans to do, but he is nowhere to be found, with no one having any idea where he suddenly went. Feige informs his older brother that Blair doesn't seem to be in the area. Abel tells him that he mistakenly thought that Blair wouldn't be able to hold back his curiosity and step up by himself, but he also states that he will come to him sooner or later with a confident look on his face, which causes Feige to be a bit taken aback by his brother's statements. Later at school, the girls in the class are gossiping about something. They are gossiping about Blair, who was revealed to be the one that proposed the devil's number, and that people are asking him to address the problem at hand. Blair is troubled by the fact that Abel managed to shift the attention to him instead of the Howard family. Suddenly, Toby pokes him from his side while calling him. Blair responds quickly and says that he doesn't know anything despite Toby not saying anything yet, but he simply points to something in front of them. Blair looks over to see what it is, and sees a massive man who is also their history professor named Hank, which makes him panic since he wasn't paying attention. Hank tells him that he knows that he is good at mathematics, but he asks if he has a problem with him since he keeps failing his history tests every single time. Blair makes an excuse saying that his memory of the subject is still hazy, so he can't recall it. Hank slams his palm on his desk, which startles him quite a lot. The teacher then scolds him while shouting that he still needs to focus on his studies even if he is famous now. Toby raises his hand nervously and informs the teacher that someone is looking for Blair. Hank shouts at him for interrupting, but Toby continues to point at the person looking for Blair. The teacher explicitly states that no one is allowed to interrupt the lesson he is teaching, not even the vice president Calvin. Calvin comes up from behind and grabs his shoulder, then states that he is the one looking for Blair, which startles him. He begins to double down on his words and finally lets Blair go. They go to the hallway after leaving the classroom. A man dressed the same as Calvin also tags along. The vice president greets him once again with a warm smile on his face. Blair looks defeated as he realizes that he came to him for the devil's number. Calvin states that the outside world is waiting for him to stand up and solve the devil's number, which puts them under pressure, so they have no choice but to ask for help. Blair thinks for a bit before answering, but he is interrupted by the man next to the vice president, saying that they really need his help and that it brings no harm to him either. Blair bluntly tells them that he really doesn't want to help with a bright smile on his face. A while later, Toby is in a rush and suddenly opens the door, which was Miss Brittany's office, so she becomes puzzled as to why he is in such a rush. She asks him what he is rushing for as he tries to catch his breath. Toby tells her in a panic that Blair was suddenly taken away, which causes her to become worried. Meanwhile, inside the meeting room at the school, a handful of people are on standby in front of the door. The people are all scholars and officials of the math circle, which gather around Blair, putting him under a ton of pressure. Among them are the 4 associate deans of the academy, and also the 3 vice presidents of the mathematical society. Blair also realizes that there are more than a dozen association deacons waiting outside the door as well. He states that he knows that Vice President Calvin planned to pressure him in order to agree to tell them about the devil's number. Calvin tells him that he has released such a devilish problem, which is also his responsibility since he started it. Blair responds by asking why they are so inclined to call the truth devilish. The deans of the school are triggered by his statement, but Calvin doesn't let them talk. He then asks Blair if the devil's number really could not be expressed as a ratio of whole numbers, to which he replies saying that it's not only the devil's number. The square root of 2, 3, and 5 are also numbers that can't be expressed as a ratio of integers. He states that there are an infinite amount of numbers that can't be proved mathematically, and he can only tell them a little. The mature-looking man asks what he meant by that, and also asks him how many centuries they have been wrong. Blair assures them that this is a very normal thing due to the nature of mathematics, which is constantly changing, and as long as they find proof, they can expand the numbers. Calvin pleads for his help after realizing that he truly knows the truth about the devil's number. But Blair refuses and apologizes, saying that he really can't help them with this. He also states that he knows what they are afraid of, which is the revelation that the truth they have believed for years will be overturned. Blair tells them that fear is normal, informing them that in his hometown, generations of people also challenge such problems in the pursuit of truth and knowledge. He explains that it's due to that fear of the unknown that they should want to understand it and embrace the truth, which is what their ancestors have done for so long. Blair tells them that he believes that the mathematics community will be able to face their fear and have the courage to overcome this challenge. After all, the hymn of man is the hymn of courage. The vice president is impressed by his words and is a bit taken aback. They then suddenly bow their heads to him, which seemingly startles Blair. Calvin says that he truly is right and apologizes for their brash behavior. He then thanks him for his guidance for the day and says that the mathematics community will always remember his contribution. Blair tries to assure them that it's all good, but the door suddenly flies into the room. A scholar is hit by the flying door and stumbles to the ground, and it also hits a chair on the way. They look at who caused the door to fly out at such speed. It is Brittany, who seems to be enraged due to the immense magic power she is letting out. She also readies 2 whirlwinds in her hands as she stands at the door menacingly. Brittany terrifyingly asks them what they did to Blair as she looks ready to attack at any moment. Blair raises his hands to call her. He then tells her that he is right there while she is flinging the scholars all over the room. Blair embarrassingly informs her that they only wanted to have a chat with him. Brittany becomes flustered after realizing such a fact and profusely apologizes to the deans. Calvin tells her that he understands since Blair is her beloved disciple and that it was also partly their fault for suddenly taking him away. She struggles to respond and just stands awkwardly in place. After the whole scuffle at the meeting room, they walk in the hallway as they are getting ready to go back home. She tells Blair that she impulsively went for him after hearing from Toby that he was taken since she thought that he was going to be harmed. He assures her that he can handle it in front of so many students in the school. No one would try anything on him. Brittany tells him that she has a question that she has been meaning to ask. Blair asks what it is she's wondering about. She continues and begins to ask him a question about why he came up with the devil's number to create such chaos in the math community. Blair tries to feign ignorance by saying that he was only following the mathematics tradition to ask a question. He just didn't expect that the question he asked would lead to the discovery of the devil's number, but his answer didn't seem to quell Brittany's curiosity. She then asks another question, about if he likes Isabella while she looks away in embarrassment. Blair is confused by her question and doesn't know what to say. Miss Brittany mistakenly imagines that he got
На море, я сегодня смотрю на море, Сколько разных историй залило это море. No babe, no scroll me, тебе не надо быть so much скромной. Посмотри на это море, обрати взгляд на этом взоре. Ты облако похоже на сердце, что-то вроде. Если ты хотела отложить что-то попозже, сделай прямо сейчас, вообще нисколько позже. Ты такая красивая, I feeling sorry.
jealous of Feige was hitting on Isabella, so he confronted him with such a question. Brittany then grabs both of his shoulders. She then tells him that she won't tell anyone about such a thing, and that she also supports him, which makes Blair sweat profusely and try to clear up the misunderstanding. But she goes off to her office before he can even say anything. He tries to stop her with his stupid face, but to no avail, which causes him to be petrified in embarrassment due to her misunderstanding. That night, when they return home, Blair is cooking yet another meal from his hometown, while thinking that Brittany's imagination is so strong that he will try to explain it to her again later. But Isabella suddenly shows up and asks him what he is cooking, which makes him confused as to why she is suddenly there. Brittany tells him that she invited her since she wants to learn about the devil's number and that he should let her try his cooking as well. He then asks if she majors in wind magic, to which Isabella answers, stating that Miss Brittany is a high-level magician of wind magic. Blair states that he wants to make a refrigerator, but he would need the help of a senior water magician for that. Brittany asks what it is after mishearing its name. Blair explains that it is a box made of ice which is used to preserve ingredients. Isabella also takes a look at the illustration he gave for the refrigerator, and they see a poorly drawn blueprint, which makes Isabella chuckle, before bursting out in laughter while making fun of his drawing. Blair angrily takes the drawing out of her hand as she makes fun of it. Meanwhile, Brittany seems to be focused on something and calls Blair. She then asks him if the structure she made using her powers is akin to what he had in mind for a refrigerator. Her eyes also glow in purple as she casts the spell to make it. Blair tells her that this is exactly what he had in mind and asks her how she managed to do it. She answers saying that she also knows water magic, so making ice structures is pretty easy for her. Isabella is shocked after seeing that she can cast more than one type of magic since there are only a handful of magicians who can do such a thing. Blair then asks why she stays at Street Donas even after having such magical talent. Her face darkens a bit due to his question, and her eyes wander off to the pan. She then tells Blair that the food is ready to avoid his question, which is effective since he rushes to turn off the fire. They then set the table with all of the delicious food Blair made. Isabella says that it looks weird despite smelling good, to which Brittany tells her that she also thought the same, but she found out that it was really delicious. Blair states that the dishes are all from his hometown and that it was normal that Isabella hadn't tried them yet since he didn't invite her to eat them. Isabella hides the fact that she wants to eat the food and instead stubbornly tells him that she won't eat it, even if she's starved to death today. But she quickly gives up later as they eat. She then licks her lips after tasting such savory dishes. Isabella is in a daze after finishing such delicious food. Blair mocks her and reminds her that she said that she wouldn't touch his food even if she was starving, which causes her to pull his ear, and nags him for making such delicious dishes as he screams in pain. Brittany laughs after witnessing such a lively scene. Blair asks what the matter is. She answers saying that she really thinks that they are a good match, which causes the two to freeze in place after hearing her words. Isabella turns away and states that she doesn't match such a pervert at all. Blair also turns away and states that he also doesn't match such an arrogant girl. Brittany then announces that Isabella will be promoted to a junior magician soon, so she asks her what department she plans to specialize in the future. She tells her that she wants to specialize in wind magic just like Miss Brittany. Brittany explains that wind magic is indeed powerful in the later stages, but before becoming a high-level wind user, she would not have much combat power. And she advises her that as a girl, she should be able to protect herself. So she tells her to consider the earth element, which is the strongest in defense among the 4 elements. But Isabella complains, saying that the earth magic robe is too ugly for her. Blair makes fun of her in his mind after hearing her response. She then pulls his ear again. Blair shouts, asking why she is grabbing his ear again despite not saying anything yet, to which she responds, saying that she knows that he made fun of her in his mind. Brittany then asks him what department he is going to specialize in. He thinks for a bit, before gracefully answering that he wants to choose all of the departments. Isabella laughs at him for dreaming of such a thing that even Miss Brittany couldn't achieve. Brittany then notices something. She says that Blair's words might not be a pointless dream. Isabella tells her that he was just talking nonsense, so why was she taking him so seriously? Brittany explains that the magic elements around him give people a strange feeling, but she feels a dense energy. She thinks that he might be able to have an affinity with all 4 of the elements at the same time. Brittany then states that they should forget about all that stuff for now and that she will guide him in his magic since he guided her in math. The 2 students are enjoyed due to her words, though Brittany also states that they can't rely too much on magic in order to be a good magician, because although the gods have given them the ability to cast magic, magic spells and gestures exist which can leave the magician with no opportunity to cast. And in order to make up for such a shortcoming, they need to practice martial arts in order to deal with situations where they have no time to cast magic. She demonstrates her magic by cleaning the dishes, which impresses Blair with its convenience. Brittany also informs them that there are many cases where fighting ability is more important than magic, so she will teach them about fighting before magic, which causes Blair to be surprised after learning that she can also fight. Isabella tells her that she learned martial arts at home, so she asks her to let her and Blair try it first so he can have an intuitive understanding of combat. Brittany agrees and reminds her not to hurt Blair. Isabella replies, saying that she will show him mercy while secretly thinking that she won't lose to him in martial arts. Blair then gets a bit nervous seeing her prepare herself. They head to a training room after they get ready. Isabella taunts him, saying that he shouldn't let her make him cry. Then she swiftly dashes to attack him, but he is still dead calm. She reaches him and throws a punch, but he manages to skillfully dodge her attack. In the dead of night inside the training room, the 2 fight continuously as they swiftly move across the room. Blair then grabs her wrists, which causes her to lose her balance. He then manages to incapacitate her in one swift motion. She is stuck in a revealing position, so she calls him a pervert and orders him to let go. He tells her that for him to let her go. She still has to do something, but she suddenly launches a kick straight to his face. Though her sneak attack is not successful, seeing that he managed to dodge it. Blair then swiftly attacks her with wind magic, which causes her to lose her footing. She loses her balance again and falls to the ground. She screams in panic at her impending fall, but surprisingly, she didn't fall to the ground, since Blair managed to catch her in the nick of time by grabbing onto her hips. Brittany interrupts their moment by asking Blair something. She asks where Blair learned martial arts. He states, while still holding Isabella, that he didn't study it formally but was interested in fighting, so he practiced Sanda for a while in his hometown. She then asks what it is. She also asks about his hometown since he has mentioned it multiple times. As he struggles to answer her question, Isabella reaches for his ears once again, and pulls on them after he still didn't let go, so he finally lets her down. She pouts while saying that the only reason she lost this time was due to her slipping on the ground. Brittany is intrigued by his martial arts and asks him to try it on her. He states that Sanda isn't very easy to control, seeing that he almost hit Isabella, but Brittany assures him that he shouldn't worry about it. Blair decides to do what she says and reminds her to be careful as he readies his fists. He then lunges straight at Miss Brittany, but she sees his attack coming and puts up her guard. He sees her balloons bouncing, which causes him to remember what his Santa coach once said. It's that when he is fighting against a real master, he will not have time to understand what happened to him. He didn't believe it at the time, but this time he was sure of it after she strikes his neck, which causes him to lose consciousness. Brittany catches him to prevent him from falling and sets him down gently on the floor. Isabella panics and asks her what happened to Blair and if he is alright. Brittany tells her that she truly does care about him and informs her that he only lost consciousness for a while and will wake up later. Isabella becomes flustered after what she just said and tries to deny it, but Brittany tells her that she knows that she likes Blair, which warrants a surprise reaction from Isabella. She desperately tries to deny liking such a pervert and asks her to stop spouting such nonsense. Brittany tells her that she shouldn't deny it since she doesn't see it as a wrong thing to do. She tells her that she too is the same as her, but something suddenly interrupts the both of them. It's Blair who is groping Brittany unconsciously, which causes Isabella to become shocked. She becomes surprised, thinking that he was awake all along, but he is only starting to wake up. The next day, Blair is covered with bandages and he complains that it hurts. Toby asks him what's up and if last night was so intense that he got hurt sleeping at Miss Brittany's house, but he makes an excuse, saying that he accidentally fell. But in truth, it's due to a violent woman who suddenly pinned him to the ground right after he woke up after mistakenly thinking that he groped Miss Brittany on purpose. He tells her to stop since his hand is about to break, while Brittany weakly asks her to let go. But in the end, she ended up breaking his hand due to her extreme strength. He also realized that Brittany had such strong fighting skills and deduced that she must have received formal combat training for a long time. Since in this world, a normal family wouldn't have the right conditions to receive combat training from an early age, let alone magic and mathematics. So he truly wonders where she came from. Suddenly, Toby interrupts his train of thought, saying that he has finally mastered the trick of summoning 2 fireballs that Blair taught him. Blair is surprised to see that he mastered it so fast. So Toby volunteers to show him what he can do. He then starts to cast the spell, and he charges up his flame energy from within. Blair becomes excited to see what he can do. Toby then finishes casting and activates the fireball. Blair is shocked to see what he can do, not because it was impressive, but due to the fact that it's disappointing. He shows him once again the little flames he managed to muster with all his strength. Looking at the 2 tiny flames he made, Blair comforts him by saying that his magical power is indeed higher than what it used to be. He hides the fact that he was disappointed by his technique, so he doesn't say anything more. Suddenly, a cake appears in front of him. It's being given by Alice, who recently heard that he was injured, so she brought a cake for him to eat. She guesses that he didn't bring any lunch today, which is the reason she also brought the cake. Alice then scares away Toby, saying that he must have eaten already, so he leaves Blair and tells him to eat, and that he has somewhere he should be. Though Blair is entranced by the food, he tries to refuse, saying that he feels indebted for always eating her food. Alice asks if the cake is tasty, so Blair responds, saying that Alice's bread is the best, and he also asks if she has had lunch already. Though Alice ignores his question and asks one instead, to which Blair agrees to answer. She asks if he likes Isabella, causing him to spit out his cake in shock. He asks her why she is suddenly asking such a question, so she suspects that someone already asked the question to him. She then eagerly waits for his answer. But Blair calmly answers her question while wiping his face, saying that he only wants to study magic right now. Alice says that he has such a ruthless answer, but she also tells him that it's fine, which makes Blair question what she meant. She doesn't reply, but instead kisses him on the cheek. He becomes confused at what she did, so he questions her about what she wanted to do, but she only replies, saying that she will come to play with him again in the future. His classmates see the scene just now, and they think of him now as a senior killer, seeing that he managed to bewitch both Alice and Isabella. The next day, Blair heads to the library outside the academy while thinking of what Alice said earlier. But he decides to stop thinking about it, and instead thinks about the books on the floor he is on, which have mostly already been read by him. He stretches his arms after reading so many books in the library, and he finally thinks that it's time to go to the 2nd floor since he heard that there are higher-level magic books in that place. So he heads to the counter where a purple-haired woman resides. The woman looks unfriendly as she is reading a book. Blair approaches her and asks her how he can get to the 2nd floor of the library as he hands his identification to her. She reads that it's only apprentice level, so she informs him that he needs to be a junior magician in order to go to the 2nd floor, to which he replies, saying that he can't pass the certification yet and asks for another way. She says that it can't be helped and that at his magic level, he can't even understand such books. Blair gets a bit triggered after hearing her response, but suddenly, someone calls out to him with his alias. It is Jasmine, who offers her help to him. The woman leaves after seeing that Jasmine knows him, informs her of his circumstances, then asks her to persuade him. Jasmine reiterates that he needs to be a junior magician or else he needs to complete a certification for a new magic in order to go to the 2nd floor. But the possibility of him succeeding is too small, so she asks him to improve his mental power instead to become a junior magician, but Blair agrees to complete the certification, since he states that he just so happened to have a new idea about improving the water element magic. She warns him that if he fails the certification, then the association will blacklist him, which will make him unable to use their resources, but he assures her that it would be just fine. Though Jasmine still looks visibly worried despite his assurance, but she still agrees to let him try and leads him into the certification exam. Jasmine talks to the ones who are going to assess Blair, and they become shocked after hearing that a magic apprentice wants to certify water element improvement magic. The bald man next to her states that it must be another person looking to deceive the association since so many generations have already perfected the water element. The man in blue asks her to tell Blair that he should reconsider since he runs the risk of being blacklisted and penalized by the association. Jasmine tells them that she understands, but she still believes that they should give him a chance to try. They finally agree to authenticate him and ask her to let him in the room. Blair enters and secures his mask in place so as not to let it fall. He goes to greet the two who don't seem to be paying attention to him, but the bald man hears him introduce his name, causing him to remember who he is. Blair states that he has come to certify water element improvement magic, which could greatly increase the power of the water element. The bald man stares at him and yells at him, asking why he is here again after damaging the rune last time. He then convinces the man in blue to move to the test room after remembering what he did previously. But the man in blue is stubborn and calls him a coward for being afraid of a simple magic apprentice. He even orders Blair to hit him with the magic, so he immediately obliges. Blair starts to gather the energy from the air surrounding him. He then absorbs it through his whole body, which causes his eyes to resemble ice and flames. Afterward, he activates 2 elements from the palms of his hands. The man in blue is shocked to see that he is a dual caster, and talks to the bald man about why he didn't say so, but he ignores him and casts a spell to defend himself. Blair then combines both ice and fire in his hands, resulting in both water and steam coming out of the ice, which propels the flame at an immense speed. The bald man panics and tries to defend himself, thinking that it has happened again. Blair's magic is so powerful that it engulfs the room in a bright light that resembles the sun. Our video ends here. To ensure you don't miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel. One day, God created a new world, a bizarre world created only to relieve the boredom of this God. This being named this world as the Abyss, and the creatures he himself created began to fall one after the other into this new world and massacred everything and everyone in their path. It was inevitable. All humans had to find a crucial way to survive. However, the only possible way was to live and fight while seeing a sea of blood and corpses in a war between humans and beasts. You fight and survive, and thus you will receive a reward from the gods because these superior beings enjoy this. Nothing was as pleasurable as battles for them. Everyone had fun watching the suffering of humans fighting for their lives. On a battlefield, we see the bodies of several dragons and humans after a bloody battle where no one emerged victorious. A person is kneeling, spitting blood in front of a huge dragon with golden scales and
тобою альфа и омега. С тобой бы уехал я на край света. Неважно, я в ресурсе или не был, но детка никогда тебя не забыл. Она подумала, что кретин. Зайди в мои чувства, магазин, и я опять курю никотин, чтобы понять, что я не один. Нет, не подумай, я не кретин. Зайди в мои чувства, магазин, для своей души найди анальгин. Подарил тебе не один раз, подарил тебе не один, два.
An imposing posture. The person still breathing in his last moments of life is trampled by the enormous paw of the beast, making the poor lad agonize even more. The man with purple hair, while observing the creature, starts laughing euphorically for some unknown reason, despite all the pain he was suffering. Before departing in the last moments of his life, he starts insulting the dragon while the beast begins to create an energy ball in its mouth. The lad who was about to die thinks that if it's them, those people will probably succeed, especially if it's one in particular. Meanwhile, in another place, a woman with a golden magic circle in her hand is saying that at that moment, the last group of humans died. The girl turns around looking at 2 people, and then says that now the remaining humanity was only those who were there. The 4 gathered in that place are the last living humans in that world of war and blood where no one emerges victorious. Ares is a woman with white hair and golden armor who wields a spear and has an extremely gentle appearance. Keldian, a blonde man who uses a staff with a sculpted sun at the tip, is a mage. Kangtai is a strong man who wields a huge sword and ancient armor made from the hides of dead beasts. And they all 3 look at the last member, a lad who is sitting amid the rubble of the place. This man is named Kang Hansu and has black hair and dark armor. Then Ares compliments that they were the last who could save humanity. Kang, hearing all that, begins to open his eyes as if tired and showing that there were several wounds scattered across his body. Ares explains that they are in the room where the temporal jewel of Archenial was, the great sphere known for having the power to return to the past, and also the last hope of humanity that entered the Abyss 50 years ago and perished, leaving nothing behind. Tai tells everyone there that only one person could go back to the past, wanting to reach a consensus with the group. The man starts speaking proudly, questioning if it was already decided who would go, as if offering himself to fulfill such a mission. He says that the strongest among them, for example, could go since they knew who that person was while posing to show his pride. Keldian begins to mock Taz, saying that he thought for the first time the man would say something intelligent but was wrong. However, Ares intervenes in the conversation, telling the 2 to take it easy and stop arguing. She says that if all the Valkyries sent to battle against the Golden Dragon were defeated, the monsters would reach there in short time. And even if it's unfair, there is no other solution, and the girl walks up to one of them. Among them, the only person who could go back to the past was him, and with a sympathetic look, the girl says the name of Kang, who kept a firm expression. Looking at his hand, the boy questions if he can really go back in time, saying next that they fought for a long time. During these long years, every day without exception, they fought again, and dying wouldn't be so bad for him. Hansu continues looking at his hand. However, Ares goes and places her hand over the boy's, saying that he shouldn't sound so weak and discouraged. The girl says that the hope of all humanity was in the boy's hand while kneeling to speak with him. Smiling sympathetically with hope and a sparkle in her eyes, she asks our protagonist not to give up, and the boy just looks back. Seeing in front of him his teammates fully supporting him, Kang feels a bit more motivated. Keldian says that Ares was right because the fact that he started 20 years after everyone in the group and is still in the same position is sufficient proof of the boy's potential and strength. Ares tells Hansu that if his abilities had started to develop a little earlier or just 5 years before, the present time would be completely different. And even though he is proud, Ta comments that they were right, and for that reason, he also recognized Kang's abilities. But if he really didn't want to go, he could give the opportunity to the man because he says that if he went back, he could get all the items he didn't manage to and could have a chance. Ares, hearing that, looks at Ta threateningly, and seeing the girl's reaction, Ta gets scared and then rephrases his sentence, stating that the only one capable of that was Kang. Seeing this as a normal interaction among friends, even in the face of the end of the world, the boy gives one last smile as he stands up, determined to do what he must. Confident, Kang begins to walk toward the temporal jewel of Archenial, while everyone in the group watches him. The other three who would stay understand that Hansu is the only salvation for the entire world, and proud of their friend, they trust everything to the boy. However, a loud crash appears, making everyone in the room scared and realizing it was already happening. The ceiling of the place they were in begins to crack in half and forcefully opened by some colossal monster. Then the great golden dragon king starts to emerge above all of them, causing some rocks to fall on heroes' heads. The creature begins to charge a fire breath in its mouth, ready to shoot and finish off all those humans. Keldian, in order to save his partners, asks everyone not to let their guard down and orders the dragon to stop while casting a huge spell on it. The boy begins to instruct what they should do to fight, and thus the battle begins. The man asks Ares and Ta to make sure to hold the monster because he was going to prepare to do something. Thus we see Ta had managed to stop a huge rock with his hands and save Ares, telling Keldian not to worry because he was going to show his skills now. The girl then, with her spear in hand, quickly heads towards the dragon, spinning her weapon. Accompanied by the beast, an army of the same type of dragon race begins to arrive, ready to finish off the remaining humans. But to the misfortune of the same, Ares strikes her spear against the ground, making it grow in size, and she orders Todd to attack because that was the chance. The man then, with his huge sword in hand, begins to cover his entire body with fire while he tells Ares she didn't need to say it because he was already going to attack. Spinning his sword and creating a whirlwind of flames, he prepares to attack the dragon. With a strong attack with his sword, the boy launches a burst of fire that splits several dragons in half and heads towards the main one. However, the Dragon King quickly manages to escape and attacks Ta with its claws, but the boy barely manages to hold off the blow with his sword. Keldian asks Hansu to concentrate for everything to go right, and he draws a book, starting to prepare a spell. The mage says that our protagonist's main weapon was broken, and that he should stop thinking about that place, and thus Ares agrees, saying Keldian was right. Even sad, the girl says that the boy should leave that place and go beyond, asking Kang not to simply push away the people who come to him because he finds them annoying. And with one last look, she asks the boy to do his best to take care of people and questions if he would listen to what she was saying this time. Smiling completely sadly but trying to keep his demeanor, Hansu affirms he will try to do what the girl asked. Ares turns back to the battle, saying that even in that circumstance, the boy should not have left himself, and confidently states that she will leave the rest to Keldian, and so the girl looks to the sky as if a new dawn were to happen. Keldian, even sad, keeps the same expression, apologizing to Hansu with saying the boy would need to listen carefully. The mage begins to conjure a golden spell in his book, saying that as Ares said, there is no reason to kill unnecessarily, but he should not show mercy to cockroaches that will cause harm during the war. The boy should save only those who deserve to live, and even with a sea of blood at his feet, he should do everything for the good of humanity. The man also says that our protagonist should at least make sure to kill the Berserk monarch Clementine. And one last time, while conjuring the spell, he asks the boy if he understood, and Kang just nods, showing confidence to the mage. Almost concluding his spell, and with enormous golden energy flowing through the book and the time object, Keldian says that he's going to start. The temporal jewel of Arcania begins to emit a strong light while all its blades start to spin. Kang remains still, just looking at the object, thinking about what would happen next. Ares and Todd just watch the sphere start to emit several rays, and the two smile, trusting their friend. Finally, Keldian joins his hands that were glowing golden, making a huge magic circle appear on the ceiling of that place, irradiating all that dark world. At last, the temporal jewel releases a huge burst of electricity towards the group, making everything turn white for a while. Only a few screams can be heard from some lost people asking where they were, and a woman asking if anyone had seen her son. In the midst of it all, we see our protagonist Kang looking at his own hand and realizing what had happened. Several people were in a place that looked like a post-apocalyptic world in an abandoned city, and a strong green light was emitting from the place. Smiling and covering his face with his own hand, Kang says that it worked, affirming that he would not fail in that life, not this time. All the people in that world seemed to be completely lost, not knowing what to do or where they were. They continue looking for their family, saying they wanted to go back to their homes without understanding the current situation. Desperate, a man grabs another by the collar, saying he had done something, without the other understanding what was happening. Kang says that, of course, those people were confused since they had just appeared in another unknown world without any information. The boy says that the year he was born was very special because initially there were 100 people, but the number increased exponentially, and so many people disappeared that the situation got out of control. And then on the day he turned 20, something appeared in the sky, catching the attention of many people. A kind of portal similar to an interdimensional eye that connected two worlds, and he disappeared due to this unknown power while his cell phone fell to the ground. This other world devours other dimensions and is the midpoint of the abyss's impact. Those who arrived first in this world gained abilities first and were essentially more active. But still, the creatures of strange aspects turned that world into a horrible palace, and it was a world of violence and anarchy. Those who were devoured by the abyss were transported to the so-called other world, and when everyone from this reality arrives there, the door to the abyss opens. And the great war will begin between humans and demonic beasts that only want to see blood and chaos. While stretching, Hansu comments that he has about 5 years to become strong and then starts walking around the place. The boy remembers that the skills he learned and his strength all disappeared, meaning now he is normal. Anyway, now it's time to show up, and then the boy looks at the sky. All the people wonder what was happening while the sky starts to crack and a strong blue energy begins to come out of the opening. From the interdimensional crack, a small creature comes out, leaving everyone astonished, a being that looked like a bat with horns. The creature looked very cute and extremely friendly, and all the people pay attention to it. The monster reveals itself as an assistant fairy, who was there to help with quick procedures, leaving the humans in the place astonished. A bit embarrassed, the fairy asks everyone there to please listen to what she was about to say. Hearing this, Kang calls that creature Dan fake, saying that the quick procedures she talks about were not what they seemed, but rather involved telling everyone to fight and beat each other, causing chaos everywhere. The creature first welcomes everyone to the other worlds, saying that from now on, a surprising opportunity will be given to them. However, one of the people there was completely dissatisfied, saying he didn't care about any of that and just wanted to go home. Irritated, the demonic creature begins to reveal its true face and orders the human to listen to the explanation silently. Seeing this, the man immediately freezes, staying silent because he realized that the monster's tone changed quickly. The beast continues explaining that infinite freedom is given to everyone in that place. With a demonic face, she asks if the people there dreamed of a world where law, moral order, and ethics do not exist and everyone is free from rules, and it wasn't just that. There are all the physical limitations weighing on anyone would disappear, and depending on what you do, you could grow infinitely stronger. Similar to a powerful hero in a movie, everyone uses magic or their body's artifice to fight. With a cute expression, the creature says that the chance to do everything they ever imagined becomes reality in that world and asks if everyone thought that was incredible. She also says she will show a simple demonstration of what she can do there and quickly prepares to snap her fingers. When the beast snaps her fingers, she looks at the person who had interrupted her and quickly a hole forms in the man's shoulder. Seeing a person literally evaporate in front of them and with the boy's blood splattering, everyone is in total shock. Screams begin to spread throughout the place, and you can hear people saying the poor boy just vanished suddenly without anyone seeing. With a demonic expression, the fairy apologizes, then laughs, saying she didn't like people who talked too loudly. In desperation, the humans start to run, screaming and asking for help from anyone. However, there were no gods left to help them, and the fairy begins to snap her fingers, killing many of the people who were screaming, trying to flee. Again, with a demonic and frightening expression, paralyzing all who survived, the beast says she had already mentioned she hated noisy things. The monster asks if the surviving people will work hard, but everyone can only freeze, trying to stay quiet so as not to anger the beast. With a cute expression again, she says it was very good that everything was now calm, and so she would continue conjuring a stone in her hand. This stone the fairy calls a rune, explaining that anyone can obtain a rune by killing anything that is alive. There are 8 other runes that look like this one, and they appear randomly. This rune had no color, but if you worked hard and grew, you could get better and more powerful runes. While looking at the stone that resembled a crystal, she says this was a rune that increased physical strength. The monster asks who wanted to take it, and Kang, in the middle of the crowd, still in shock from everything that happened, raises his hand. The boy volunteers to take it, thinking it had been a long time since he used the last rune. The fairy is surprised by the boy's quick request, and then says that enthusiastic attitude was very good, walking up to Hansu. The monster asks the boy to give his hand, and so he does, and the beast places the rune in the boy's hand, saying the rune was very cool because it distorted any law. The fairy explains that scientifically the boy's muscles had a weight limit of 117 kilos, but at that moment, by using that rune, it increased to 122, and it wasn't just that. However, Kang seems to have the same expression as before, and the fairy says that wasn't the expression she expected, and Kang thinks it's boring to hear the same thing again. Disappointed, the fairy flies away and explains that runes have different effects depending on the type, and they are full of abilities that cannot be explained by science. And again, scaring everyone, she says she wanted to show it one more time, asking if anyone wanted to try. But seeing that no one volunteers, the monster says she would stop there. The beast informs that no matter what happens, everyone should note that as it doesn't matter which rune someone gains or what ability increases, it will not be a bad thing. And to become stronger, she asks everyone to gather many runes if they wanted to survive, of course. All the humans, hearing that, realize what it was about and look at the ground, seeing several bodies of others who were killed by the fairy. Quickly, a huge confusion begins with all of them fighting because they wanted to get the runes that were on the ground. However, when they finally grab them, the fairy collects all the runes from the ground and says that judging by the guy who had taken the rune last time, they didn't need her explanation. Everyone is in anguish because they saw that as a hope for their salvation. Pointing to Kang, she tells him that if anyone touched their right ear, it could see which runes they possessed. So everyone does, seeing a holographic status window appear in front of them. The beast concludes by saying that humans normally have 10 status, and that's all they needed to know, and Kang activates his window. He realizes that his strength increased by 1, and if he gathered more runes after hunting, his mana and magic power numbers could also increase exponentially. The boy explains that you can acquire runes anywhere as long as you kill something alive, and it doesn't matter what you kill, whether human or beast. The fairy says that at the beginning there will be a bit unequal compared to the place they came from, and we see some unknown people. But she would give something that will make them happy, and so the fairy asks everyone to forget the past. And suddenly all the people in place receive knives for combat, and the monster concludes by saying that everyone should enjoy the new life. The fairy, with one last thing to do, says that when she leaves, the tutorial will begin, so everyone there's...
Попробуй взять, попробуй отнять. Покажи свое противостояние. Что обертка не более, знаешь, плевать. Повернуть время вспять, чтобы выйти опять и залатать свои пробелы. Знаешь, однако не просто лезть в свои мысли, лететь своей костью, репетировать слово свобода внутри, понимаешь, а не отморозка, Наверное, было сейчас броско, я бы сделал тут отступ, но после него следует контратака. Молодой, ничего не понимаю, город колот меня изнутри.
Should do their best, and the people are confused. Everyone, when turning around, sees an army of deadly creatures waiting to enter combat with all the humans there. Monstrously aiming only for destruction and chaos, an army of goblins sets out to kill all the humans. After the fairy's departure, the people who were there still remain in shock, looking at the bodies of the other humans. One of the men holding a knife in his hands nervously questions if that was really the tutorial. But people realize something is happening, and when looking back, an entire black aura starts to emerge. And when they face it, it is possible to see an army of goblins ready to attack all the humans there. The two races stand before each other and begin to stare, ready to enter into a conflict that will result in a sea of blood. A woman in the group of humans asks everyone else to calm down so as not to irritate the monsters and to move slowly backward. Our protagonist remains still while watching all the people trying to flee slowly backward. However, one of the men bumps into another person who is standing still for some reason. The man questions what the boy was doing motionless, and the man standing says something was wrong. Someone sees a barrier in front of them, and when trying to cross it, is immediately unable to do so. Everyone starts to panic, hitting the hologram, trying to leave that place urgently. The man realizes that the walls were also beginning to close in for some reason, as if forcing them to fight. And when looking back, they see the army of goblins completely irritated and restless, wanting to fight. The creatures start roaring fiercely. Then one of those trying to flee stands to fight, cursing those creatures, saying he couldn't die there. Bowden looking to the side, and that man sees that one of the people there managed to pass through the wall. Seeing that scene, he becomes completely restless, questioning how that person managed to do that. But the boy cannot explain why he passed and says he just went through that side, and we see that the number 49 was written on the wall. Another boy who was also there sees the number and questions why it was there. Then the man who had previously been unable to pass manages to cross. They realize that the number on the wall decreased, and the people understand that it meant only 50 people could leave. Everyone there starts a civil war among themselves, trying to pass through the wall immediately to save themselves. Seeing that fight, Kang sighs, saying that all of it was pathetic because all 100 people there needed to unite and fight to have fewer casualties. He explains that when he first arrived there, approximately 40 people died to the goblins. Of all the people who couldn't pass through the wall, only 10 survived, but with a bloodthirsty look, he says that this time the story will be different. While drawing the knife he received from the fairy, the boy adds that first he needs to clear this area and move on to the next phase. Tired of waiting, immediately all the goblins start charging at the humans. One of them jumps and kills a person while another goes after a young boy who was begging for help. However, suddenly the boy can only see the goblin being split in half by someone. And immediately our protagonist kills one of the goblins while another beast starts charging at the boy. The boy manages to dodge the blow, grab and immobilize the small creature's arm, and then takes the opportunity to strike his knife against the monster's neck. Kang remains in a fighting stance, ready to kill anyone in his way, and the creatures start charging at him. Seeing all that sea of blood the boy was making with the creatures, all the humans there just watched the scene, shocked by what they saw. After a while, in a battle where our protagonist shredded several beasts, he stands up, still staggering from the weakness of his current body. While wiping the blood of one of his victims from his face, Hansu says that it was a bit uncomfortable since this was his body from decades ago. The young man crouches to collect the runes from the creatures' bodies, thinking he was quite lucky as he looks at his status. He says that his dexterity increased by 0.1 and explains that dexterity not only increases speed, but also distorts the user's time, increasing reaction speed by 0.1. This meant that the user could perform the same action much faster, and then, in the background, one of the creatures suddenly stands up. The monster immediately advances toward our protagonist, throwing his weapon at the boy, and he quickly looks back. The blade passes and Kang manages to dodge quickly, then turns back, throwing his dagger right into the goblin's skull. Some creatures that had still survived get angry seeing their companions being killed and charge at the boy. 3 of these beasts try to stab our protagonist together to prevent him from reacting. While wielding a dagger from one of the creatures, the boy says it was as expected since the monsters get enraged as soon as they see blood. Quickly, without giving the beasts a chance to react, the boy slashes through and kills them all instantly. As Kang makes more victims, he takes the opportunity to collect the runes from their bodies, stabbing and forcefully extracting them. The boy is somewhat out of breath because his body was not keeping up with his mind, but it was still very satisfying. The other people who were fighting to escape turned their attention to Hansu, realizing he was fighting alone. Inspired by that, they themselves, irritated with the situation, decide to help our protagonist, charging at the beasts immediately. The monsters also notice the humans' approach, so the two groups once again face each other, but now a battle will begin. While fighting and splitting a goblin in half, our protagonist thinks that usually there's no need to rush like this at the beginning. But there's no time to delay at that moment, so he defends with his dagger against an attack from one of the beasts, repelling it instantly. The boy says that in that place there were many transmigrants, and if you counted the whole world, there's an immeasurable amount. And the freshmen who come there for the next 3 months will be something, so it's possible to see one of the humans killing a goblin. Hansu adds that when people arrive there, they are protected in the tutorial area. But after the 3-month period when you are protected, everyone will be thrown into a fight with the 2nd and 3rd year freshmen in a cruel, cold, and bloody battle. Kang continues fighting and concludes his thought, stating that whatever your opinion, it was a unique opportunity. Once again, he slashes a goblin in half, picking up a rune stone to strengthen himself. Looking around, Hansu says that the chance to get stronger, even if just a little, is there and you will take advantage of it. Squeezing one of the runes he had obtained, the boy says that Keldian made the right decision in sending him to that period. Revealing the battle scene, we see dozens of dead goblins and some human bodies lying on the ground. Several people are resting after the exhausting fight, and some of them say it was all unbelievable. They observe our protagonist and wonder how he fought so many goblins alone. In the middle of a sea of goblin and dead beast bodies, Hansu stands still on his feet. With a face smeared with the blood of his victims, the boy curses those beasts, staring at their bodies. The fairy then returns to the place, and a glow appears in her eyes as if she were proud looking at something. Seeing our protagonist in the middle of the goblin corpses, the beast says he did well and states that the number of remaining participants is decent. Some people, angry and others crying because they lost close relatives, start cursing the fairy. The beast asks if people already knew how to survive there, and then since no one answered, she removes the barrier, assuming everyone knew. A dimensional rift opens, and she starts to pass through it as if it were a door, saying that they need to keep moving forward and wishing good luck to all the participants there. The humans start cursing the monster, telling it to leave and calling it bastard, while our protagonist just watches. Looking at his status and wiping the blood from his face, the boy notes that it wasn't bad compared to before. He adds that his status was already good enough for the beginning of the tutorial, and looking at his hand, the young man comments that he found something quite useful. He sees a dagger that was previously used by the goblins, and the system notifies him that he received that blade as a courtesy symbol for some reason. Kang questions how he should proceed from now on because he needed to find a way to get stronger as quickly as possible. Remembering his friends Erz, Tay, and Keldian, he wonders what his friends would have done if they were in his place. But now that he thought about it, there was a guy who said something that caught his attention. In the past, we see a blonde, long-haired person drinking a beer, while asking Kang if he had ever heard of hidden dungeons. Hansu, who was drinking next to this person, asks what these hidden dungeons he had never heard of were. The guy explains that these dungeons are hidden within the tutorial area and have the maximum difficulty. As they clink their glasses, the man adds that he couldn't clear it, and no one had managed to do so. After hearing the guy's story, Kang repeats what he heard, saying the boy had cleared the dungeon halfway, and because of that, he was still able to get strong. The man confirms, saying that this would be the reason he was in that place because it was a proof of his strength. And finally, he says that if he could go back in time, he would definitely try to clear that dungeon first, and if he had done so, he probably would have been able to defeat Kang. Because one thing is certain, the higher the difficulty and the more impossible it seems, the greater the reward when you succeed. Finishing, he asks if our protagonist wasn't curious about what was at the end of that dungeon. Remembering that, the boy gets a serious expression, saying his goal was decided. Illuminated by the sunlight, he notes that if he wanted to do this, there were things he would have to resolve first. He begins to explain the first stage of the tutorial, which is the initial phase where 100 people gather and act together to defeat a greater evil. You act within the allocated area for a week at a time and do this hunt for 3 months, and in the end, upon completing the tutorial, the safe area will be released and you can have contact with other people from the abyss. Currently, there are 2 hidden pieces in the first stage of the tutorial, and no one has ever reached the end. Kang says he would have to obtain them because it was the only way to get stronger. But first, he needed to get the nearest hidden piece, so after some walking, we see the boy standing in a place, saying it must be there. Suddenly, a voice emerges, and looking to the side, Kang notices a group of men trying to force a woman to go with them, but the girl is reluctant. The boy thinks that conflicts are starting to happen everywhere, and even though the woman tries to break free, the man holds her wrist. With a scary aura and a psychopathic expression, the thug says that everyone needed to work together to survive, continuing with a malicious expression. The bully questions if the woman didn't want all of them to live, and the girl hesitates hearing that. Hansu states that there was no time to pay attention to this kind of thing, and he needed to find the hidden piece since it would disappear in a week. But someone suddenly calls him, and then a person behind our protagonist asks if he was Kang, and our protagonist thinks he was in a hurry. Kang questions if the boy knew him, and the man with headphones is incredulous, not understanding the question. Another blonde boy appears, questioning Hansu if he was crazy since they were all together before arriving there. Hearing that, Kang still has an expression of not understanding while asking how that boy knew his name, but something comes to his mind. Looking at them, the boy realizes that those are his college friends, and the blonde boy continues to find his friend's attitude strange. Hansu thinks that they all came on a trip together, and since everyone in the group died, he had forgotten about their existence. The woman who was being intimidated quickly frees her wrist from the man's hand, ordering the bully to let go of her because they were going with Kang. Our protagonist looks at the girl, recognizing her as Yumi. The girl walks up to the boy, and Kang thinks that based on her appearance, the young woman will definitely cause trouble. Mi starts talking to Hansu, questioning where he had been, and the bully who was intimidating the girl asks if that boy was looking down on them. Looking at Kang, they call the boy a bastard, wishing for his immediate death. Swallowing hard, the criminal realizes that this was the man who took care of the group of goblins earlier. However, he thinks that if the whole group attacks Kang now while the boy is tired, there will be an opportunity, so some men prepare for the fight. The bully steps forward, drawing the attention of the group of friends walking with our protagonist. He tells Mai that she should listen to people before leaving like that, and questions who Kang is because the young man seemed quite injured and unable to defend himself. With a scary aura again, the man orders the girl to go to him while speaking politely, saying that if she doesn't go to the group, they will come to her. All of Mi's college friends get irritated, but Kang maintains a neutral expression, thinking that this type of person always exists no matter the place. The boy sighs, starting to walk toward the bully, and Kang tells the man that he was too excited just because it was his first fight in that place. Not even knowing who his opponent was, believing in the illusion that he could defeat that person. Hansu quickly appears in front of the thug with a murderous expression, asking if he understood what the boy was trying to say. After a while, the man realizes what had happened, looking at the boy and cursing him mentally. Kang draws his blade and asks if the thug had anything to say, but he remains silent. Another person appears, a man dressed in a suit with thinning hair, and says they were not bad people, and the boy who was intimidating the girl calls him boss. The so-called boss asks if Kang wanted to go with them because looking at the situation, there were many problems ahead, and it would be better if they faced them together, and the boy, looking into his eyes, recognizes him staring at the boy angrily. Our protagonist thinks that man had already perfectly adapted to that place, no longer having a reason to hide his true nature and running like a wild hyena. In the end, that so-called boss would become an outlaw. Hansu, wielding his dagger, questions in his thoughts if he should take care of him now since this is a golden opportunity. The boy remembers what Ares said about there being no reason to kill unnecessarily, but not to show mercy to the cockroaches that would bring harm during the war. He remembers the girl telling Kang not to push people away so much and to do his best to take care of them, smiling afterward. With a serious expression and head down, remembering his happy moments, the boy says that Ares was saving many lives. The boy thinks that it wasn't, as if he had time to take care of everyone in that group now, and besides, this type of person would self-destruct just by being left alone. Ignoring the proposal, the boy tells the boss and his group to leave, and then one of the subordinates gets angry at that attitude. The thug boss tells the man to let it go, but the boy gets irritated, saying he couldn't. And the boss adds, telling some though that that brat wasn't important, and they needed to focus on another goal. He concludes by saying that the most important goal was to establish order in that place, because it was a strange world with weird monsters and there was still a damned fairy, but there were things there that he liked more than usual, explaining that in this world the strong rulers were gone, stating afterward that they should take advantage of this chance. Then the so-called boss tells Sumno that they were leaving and the man promptly agrees, and so the whole group of criminals sets off on their journey. Kang's blonde friend questions how humans are scarier than goblins. Turning his attention back to our protagonist, the young man thinks that anyway, he already knew the boy was a strange and a bit weird guy. However, he questions if he was always like this, and Hansu continues looking ahead, aiming at the goals he must achieve. The blonde boy thinks that Kang was a damned orphan who always sat in a corner distracted, so he didn't think much about the boy. However, the boy goes to question Kang because he acted as if he didn't know them. But trying to come up with an excuse, Kang spends some time silent and then, with the worst answer he could give, says it was memory loss. The blonde boy questions why his friend was talking like that because he was acting old, and then Mi starts laughing at the situation. Looking at the girl, seeing her beautiful smile and all her radiant beauty, Kang says it's a shame because the girl could have a comfortable life. But their beauty is a double-edged sword. If used well, it can become a powerful weapon. The group of college friends sets off on a journey following Kang beginning to walk through that destroyed world. One of Hansu's friends, a girl, says that they had all been walking for a while without saying a single word and asks if they had a destination. Mei asks Kang where they were going now, and the boy replies that they will all understand when they get there. The girl who had mentioned they hadn't said anything before realizes what place it was. Hansu then moves to the front of the group, stating that this was their first destination. The boy observes the place, explaining that this was the subway station where the hidden piece is located. Everyone realizes where they are, and looking at a moss-covered but still readable sign, they confirm that it was Gangnam Station. The group of friends observes the entire station they knew, now completely destroyed. Mi questions why they were there since it didn't make sense to her. Kang thinks he doesn't have the patience to explain every little thing, and if it weren't for what Air said, he would be walking around alone. But he feels he has no choice, so he starts to say that he had a hunch, saying he thought that instead of recovering his memory, he gained a superpower. Yumei is impressed while the other four members of the group seem incredulous. A blonde girl goes to her boyfriend and asks if he was sure it was okay to follow Kang. Hansu can hear and responds that they didn't need to, explaining that he was the type of person who respects individual preferences, and it was up to them to decide what they wanted. The blonde boy continues to be irritated with our protagonist for some reason, saying that whatever it was, he hated seeing Kang act that way. The group remains silent, watching Hansu descend the stairs, and then they make their final decision. They all start following our protagonist, exploring that abandoned place and worrying about the surroundings. The blonde boy asked our protagonist if he was sure they were going to a safe place, but Kang replies that he wasn't and that they would meet some friends. Hearing that, Hansu's colleague becomes somewhat cocky, saying who the hell would live in a place like that and what kind of person our protagonist knew. Reaching near the end of the staircase, for some reason, Kang asks everyone to wait and the group stops walking. Kang notices something, drawing his dagger immediately, and everyone asks what was happening. Hansu asks his friend Taesung to dodge something, and the blonde boy, looking back, sees the protagonist striking with his dagger. The man is scared, thinking the attack is against him, putting his hands up to try to defend himself. Taesung asks what it was, and upon realizing it, he sees that near his private parts, Kang was slicing a yellow-skinned, green-blooded larva. Hansu explains that this was a dungeon modeled after Gangnam Station, and these are the green worms that writhe after feeling vibrations from the ground. While looking at the rune that came out of the monster, he informs them that these creatures hate sunlight, so they usually come out of the ground to attack. Picking up the rune, the boy adds that if you get bitten by the awkward mouth of this worm, your flesh could be easily torn off, so everyone in the group should be careful because if they get bitten, they will faint and die before being able to do anything. Everyone in the group is completely scared and incredulous at that, becoming extremely frightened. The boy comments that he will show a simple way to deal with them, then starts stabbing one of the small worms with his dagger. After a while, everyone in the group is easily eliminating those little monsters, becoming impressed. Kang is observing 4 people in the group, stating that they are useful, but looking back, he sees the boy wearing headphones completely clumsy and lost. Hansu walks up to the boy, saying that if he wasn't confident, he should walk on the intact marble slabs and be careful of some hidden worms. Yumei is talking to her friend about the best way to kill the worms, and the blonde girl agrees, adding that it was similar to the game of whack-a-mole. The boy with headphones continues to hesitate because he can't kill any worms, telling himself that he could do it and that he had to do it. Then one of the beasts emerges from the ground, charging at the boy, ready to attack him, catching him off guard without a chance to react. But immediately, Kang pushes him back, stepping in front and slicing the monster into 3 pieces instantly. After being pushed, the boy just manages to sit on the ground, watching the entire scene in amazement. The boy quickly gets up, thanking him and Kang, and his thoughts dies, saying that it was already obvious because that boy would not be useful for the final war. Hansu continues walking, stating that if the boy with the headphones participates in the battle, he will end up being a burden. Taesung says that our protagonist seemed to know what would happen ahead of time and asks how the boy knew, and Kang replies that he had already explained. With a proud look and smiling, he turns around, stating that this was his superpower. While everyone in the group remains incredulous, not believing it, Yumi continues to be impressed. To change the subject, Kang comments that they should actually focus on hunting, and then we see several dead larva bodies on the ground. Kang asks why they weren't collecting the runes while he picks one up. Yumi replies that they thought it would be good if the boy collected the runes and protected them, similar to giving everything to someone who carries them in a game. She says it wasn't like they would become strong like a superhero just by picking up runes, so that was the decision they all made. Hugh concludes that it would be better to give everything to Kang, and the boy would protect them in return, but the boy just sighs. The boy responds that everyone should take what they hunt, and if people wanted to go with him, they should at least follow the most basic rules. Hansu starts thinking, explaining that those who wandered the abyss before them established the most basic rules for the sake of coexistence. You take what you hunt, but in the case of group hunts, things will be distributed based on contribution and priority. However, in life-threatening crises, relationships based on goodwill are prone to break down and lead to betrayal. The boy concludes his thought, saying that they will soon realize how truly cruel and malevolent this place is. Kang states that the things everyone should trust are their own abilities, and if you are useless, you are destined to be discarded. Concluding that this is the law of the world, the other 5 members of the group are shocked to hear this so bluntly. Yumei steps forward, saying that in that case she will do whatever it takes, and then starts walking toward the streets. The other 4 agree among themselves, realizing that was the best option since Kang had spoken. They'd all start heading out in search of runes, while Hansu thinks it will only take a little time for them to get used to it, so much so that they won't need to be told. And the boy notices that the group began fighting like dogs for the possession of runes, so we see the people trying to grab some of them. After some time of hunting, collecting runes from the bodies of dozens of dead worms, Taesun finds a strange and large rune. The boy says he can feel something while everyone watches in shock, looking at the purple rune. Analyzing it, the system informs that the name of that rune is the essence of the cruel troll tribe, with a lizard engraved on it. Taesun thinks that if he uses that, he will gain a superpower, just like our protagonist. Looking at his friend Taesung, feeling proud of the stone, Hansu thinks that he had told them to take the rune they found, so it would be strange to contradict himself now. The blonde boy mocks our protagonist, asking if he can keep that rune and also questioning if Kang would go back on his words. Hansu, who had already decided, just nods, answering yes, and his friend is a bit incredulous because it was unexpectedly easy. Seeing the situation, Hansu thinks that the essence of the cruel troll tribe is a good rune for the beginning of the game. The boy explains that this skill gives the bearer defense and regeneration power, and both are essential for survival in this place, which is why it is very popular among players. As a debuff, it also increases hunger, but regarding food, people usually just steal from the weaker ones. And also, the strength and proficiency of the skills acquired through runes are determined by their own level. The smart ones who are born with the gift of having a lot of magic usually have around hundreds of runes. His friend Keldian, for example, acquired more than 1,000 skills, but Kang watches the boy using the rune. Feeling downcast, our protagonist states that it was different, just immersed in his thoughts. At the time when he hadn't gone back in time, we see the boy trying to absorb some runes but failing in the process. The rune he tried to use starts to glow with a yellow light as if rejecting the boy. The boy feels hurt, clenching his fists as if irritated and dissatisfied with something. Holding one of the runes in her hand, Eris says that as she imagined, our protagonist had a limit on the skills he could acquire. Putting her hand on her face, the girl informs that apparently Kang was limited to only 7 abilities, and that if she had known that before, he could have learned stronger skills. While he sees himself amid a bunch of runes that could no longer be used, the boy thinks that being restricted to just 7 was a total failure. But thanks to his weakness, he gained the buff of having an overwhelming peculiarity that was far superior to that weakness. His abilities never stopped evolving, like his skilled Dororo lizard essence, so even a simple technique evolved enough to rival others. With this unique characteristic, his friend Erez gave him the nickname 7 Stars. And surprisingly, this peculiarity was what allowed Kang to have the same power level as his teammates, even though he arrived there 20 years later. For a moment, the boy remembers the Eternial Stone, which was responsible for bringing him back to the past in the name of his companions. With a serious expression, remembering the old times, Hansu states that to honor his friend's efforts, in the end he couldn't make any mistakes. The boy also remembers that Erez told him to be careful while selecting the 7 abilities to learn and not to get frustrated again like in his last life. And if everything goes according to plan, it will be a smooth path before he leaves the tutorial zone without taking too many risks in the process. Then we see Yumei looking at Taesung, who is about to use the rune while the boy continues to smile, imagining the power he would receive. Quickly, the rune begins to transform into a purple slime and merge with the boy's body. Thus, his system informs him that the physical resistance stat was created and the cruel troll tribe essence skill was acquired, and he had 1% proficiency. Looking at his system, Taesung realizes he got a physical resistance stat, and all of his other stats increased significantly, making him extremely satisfied. The blonde boy then turns around looking at Kang and calling him an idiot, saying that even if he asked, he would never have given that up. With an extremely smug smile, he states with all his words that the boy should wait because he would catch up soon. Kang, already tired of waiting for his friends, quickly calls everyone, commenting that they had to go now and continue their journey. And with his arrogance, Taesung walks up to Kang, putting his hand on the young man's shoulder and saying they should walk together now because it would be dangerous. While doing that, he turns around to impress Yu Mai-hee, saying it was better for the strong people to go in front to protect the weaker ones. Already noticing his friend's attitude, Kang realizes that the boy was considering him a rival. Having lived and gone back in time, Hansu doesn't care but states that this didn't mean he would let it slide, so he removes Taesung's hand from his shoulder. The group continues walking and descending more stairs, following Kang to the destination the boy was seeking, but which was still completely unknown. Yumadi asks why they were going deeper since it was getting even darker, and the boy explains that they were going to take the subway. Mei is confused hearing that, questioning if there were still trains operating in that destroyed station, and Hansu responds that she would see what would happen. However, our protagonist, while walking, starts to get lost in his thoughts, stating that the information from that guy was never wrong. We return again to Kang's memory when the blonde boy was talking about the dungeons in the tutorial and a person arrives, interrupting the conversation. The young man who was drinking asks who was butting into the conversation and badmouthing him, and the irritated boy looks to the side. Another man with black hair who served in the human army states that he just heard the boy was showing off with his basically non-existent knowledge. Then, sitting in the middle between Kang and the boy's friend, the man states that he would tell them the quickest way to get strong in a short time. He says that to get strong quickly, you need to get your hands on something important in the tutorial zone, and it was down in the Gangnam subway. The man explains that the stations are located and structured differently, but it's the same place up to the 3rd floor, and at the end of the stairs there is an unknown portal. Crossing it, you will find a subway that surprisingly has not yet left, and if you can catch it, you basically conclude that the only problem is that it's difficult to get there. While walking, Kang keeps thinking about it, stating that there is a hidden piece he must find that day at all costs, or the subway will leave. Kang and the whole group observe an enormous portal in front of them as if linking 2 different dimensions. Hansu then states that he will see what this piece is. Mai, seeing that interdimensional portal, thinks that it really wasn't Gangnam Station. Since in all the time she had been there, she had never heard of an entrance like that while staring at the portal emitting several blue rays and a strong glow. Worried about the situation, Yu asks if our protagonist is really going to enter and wonders how the boy knew what was inside. He explains that he was just going by his instincts and, as he had said before, anyone who wants to turn back is free to leave at any time. With his new abilities and still with his ego inflated, Taesung promptly states that he would go at all costs. Mai then quickly responds that she will also enter the portal, and Kang, looking at her, thinks that the girl seemed to be getting impatient. Since Mi is intelligent, she probably understood well the situation that someone like her is at greater risk, remembering the group of thugs who intimidated her. Looking at the girl full of hope, Hansu thinks that she will have to get stronger somehow, even if it means getting cut on the face. However, the blonde girl and her boyfriend decide to stay there as they will continue hunting the worms that remain in the subway, and Sangjin says he will go too. Even scared, trying to keep a firm expression, the boy states that he will also enter the portal. Taesung starts mocking the boy, questioning why he wanted to go there since he was scared to death to kill some disgusting insects. Irritated, Choi retorts, shouting that it was none of the bully's business and that he shouldn't interfere. He also says that what he does doesn't matter to the boy, but hearing this, Taesung gets somewhat irritated. He points a finger at the boy, asking what he just said, as the boy was talking a lot for someone who was being carried. However, with a firm expression and confident posture, Kang just tells the two to stop immediately with those childish fights. Walking towards the wormhole, Hansu reinforces that there is no time, so they should do whatever they want, and thus the 3 follow the boy. The boy with the headphones, after hearing that, just goes after Mi without saying anything and ignoring Taesung. However, the blonde boy is not at all pleased, questioning how those bastards dare insult him in front of you. Then Kang crosses the portal and starts thinking that there are more than 1,000 types of monsters in the tutorial zone, and the terrain also varies. But even so, there are places that do not change no matter what happens, so the boy begins to analyze the entire place he was in. He thinks that, as he imagined, it is there, and thus the boy with the headphones becomes completely confused. Everyone who crossed the portal realizes that there was a convenience store inside the train station. Inside, it is possible to see Sangjin with his headphones around his neck, while he rummages through the place looking for something that interests him. Kang is passing through the entire place and says that the same boy who mentioned this place also said there was a convenience store on the 2nd floor of the subway. Taesung, who was analyzing a knife sold there, questions if they should take all the types of weapons they have there. Our protagonist still continues exploring the place for something he doesn't tell us about. Hansu also thinks that the boy said that place is more like a supermarket than a convenience store, but it really has everything necessary. Kang goes to a shelf, picking up a pot and placing it over a fire, and Mi asks why he is doing that. With a bag of unknown things in his hand, he explains that he is just cooking. Seeing that, Mi recognizes what it is and watches the boy pouring a green slime into the pot, explaining that it is worm blood. She remembers that earlier, when she saw it, she wondered what Kang was doing, watching our protagonist extract the worm's blood and put it in a bag. The boy explains that goblin skin becomes highly poisonous in contact with green blood, and thus the boy begins to tear apart a piece of goblin fabric. Kang informs that goblins evolved to survive against the green worms, and that their poison is extremely potent, and thus he continues his exotic dish. As Taesung starts to smell the concoction, he comments that it smells really good and asks if he could have just a bite, but Kang surprises him by saying it's poison. Hearing that, the blonde boy says that if it's poison, Hansu should tell people first, but our protagonist retorts by saying that it was his fault. Yumei is somewhat impressed, commenting that they would never have thought of this and asks how Kang thought of it. Once again, the boy gives the same excuse, that it was his superpower and that his brain was overflowing with knowledge. Taesung gets irritated as he avoids the subject. He says that, in fact, he thought his head would explode from remembering all this and starts recalling the moment when Keldian was giving him lessons. The mage says that even if they return to the past without knowledge, everything is useless, and that the amount of information is what matters most. At that moment, Ta and Kang were attending a lesson, and Keldian continues explaining that they should not share this information with just anyone. Tapping on the board, he also informs them to keep this in mind, waking Ta, who was taking a nap. Keldian states that future knowledge only accelerates the abyss's decline and that they should reveal this knowledge only as planned and when truly necessary. At this moment, Kang is still cooking the poison and thinking that without knowing the exact ratio and boiling time, all of this would be useless. He pours the slimy, purple liquid into a pot and then quickly uses it to coat his sword. Yu, seeing that Kang is using it to poison his sword and buff it, asks if she could use it too. Hansu promptly responds yes, making all three of them happy with that. However, the boy extends his hand, commenting that he would charge half a strength or stamina rune for applying it to their weapons. Taesung, seeing that reaction, gets irritated, saying the boy was being too stingy and could just help his friends. Kang turns back to what he was doing, commenting that he could give it to them for free, but in the long run it probably isn't a great idea, while he continues looking forward with a serious expression. He thinks that one-sided relationships tend to crumble easily, so he couldn't follow that path. Mai, quickly catching on, says she will give him the rune later, but in return, Kang has to let her apply the poison first. Hearing that, Hansu agrees, taking the pot he had used and handing it to Mi, telling her to be careful. Taesung was planning to snatch it from our protagonist's hand, but gives up and says he will use it first and then give runes, and Sangjin says the same thing. Hansu thinks he should start the other preparations while Taesung and the other two group members continue applying the poison to their weapons. With a backpack on his back and some bags in his hands, Kang comments that this should be enough preparation. The group, still finalizing their preparations, finally states they are ready, and Kang stares at them, with Sangjin asking why he is looking at them like that. Seeing the three with huge backpacks on their backs, Kang questions if they are trying to become bait for other people. Kang explains that unless they want to live their lives fighting, they should bury everything else they wouldn't use at the moment, just like he was doing. Seeing our protagonist explaining that, Mi says that at first she thought Hansu was just very quiet, but he was a great fighter, with her eyes sparkling. Watching the boy teaching Sangjin to store things, the girl asks if one day she could have a superpower like that too. Quickly, she goes and buries her things, thinking that hundreds of millions of people were disappearing until yesterday, but none of those people returned. That's why she was content that she got to survive there for the rest of her life, feeling somewhat apprehensive and desolate. She thinks she doesn't want to die at any cost, and that to survive, she has to do her part, and that's why she was trying so hard. Yu smiles, walking towards our protagonist, thinking that if she continues with Hansu, it will be easier. Then Kang and Mi start walking together while the girl is happy being next to the boy. Taesung, irritated by that scene, states that our protagonist was acting as if he were a big deal, but in the end, he wasn't all that. And Sangjin, who is still preparing to carry his things, is quickly hit with a bag on his chest, and Taesung tells him to take care of that too. The blonde boy goes to our protagonist once again, asking about this power he mentioned, and with a serious expression, wonders if he could also get it. Reluctantly, Kang looks back and unexpectedly responds that maybe he could. All three members of the group are shocked, questioning if that was serious, and upon hearing yes, they become extremely happy and excited. The boy remembers Keldian saying that among the people who came to this world, many acquired special powers they didn't have in reality. He recalls the same guy talking a lot of nonsense that even he couldn't fully understand. But in summary, if someone is useless, our protagonist should get rid of them. Kang remembers the mage arguing with him, and Taesung, seeing the boy's reaction, asks what's wrong with him. Once again, the bully goes to bother Kang, saying he was very rude and asking if the boy was upset because he was angry with him at first. However, Kang says he didn't care about that because he wasn't very used to talking and was speaking that way because of it. He thinks that in the last 5 years before returning, he spent fighting the species that kept emerging from the abyss, and hope slowly turned into despair. And the despair numbed everything. And Kang remembers the moment when he was in a battle with various injuries on his face, completely worn out. Taesung asks if our protagonist can hit his head fighting or something because he was acting very solitary. Irritated, he thinks that if it weren't for that damn power, he wouldn't have to be embarrassed under Kang's command and could rebel. But with a malicious face, he thinks he just has to wait until he becomes strong, and then he and Mi could start going out together, and he would be Kang's boss. Taesung was about to say something again, but Kang immediately interrupts him, telling him to stop. Hansu crouches to the ground, seeing something resembling strange mucus there. Analyzing the slime, Kang states that judging by its type, it doesn't belong to a sword snail while examining it in his hands. He says it doesn't have that distinctive sour odor and doesn't see any half-dried guts, so it's also not from a zombie, leaving only one possibility. Kang begins to imagine that it is from a land siren, and in his mind comes the image of a humanoid with a grotesque tail, feminine hair, and a demonic face. The boy still feels a bit uneasy, analyzing more slime traces while continuing to walk with his friends. In a place with even more slime, he says that without a doubt, those are the traces of a land siren that must be nearby. They are not fast, but possess a paralyzing venom that makes it easy for them to tear off limbs, and Kang imagines the terrifying sight these monsters cause. However, the boy smiles slightly, thinking he has a foolproof plan to defeat the monsters. Taesung gets irritated seeing this and asks his friend to stop acting like a know-it-all. But Kang ignores the boy's tantrums and asks everyone to follow him because they will be surprised when they see something. The three in the group are confused by the boy's words, but after that, we see some alcohol bottles with a handkerchief stuffed into the neck of the bottle. Kang explains that they didn't have gasoline, which would be more effective, but that should suffice as he continues making one last Molotov cocktail. After finishing it, Mi comments that it's a homemade bomb and asks if the things they used to make it came from the convenience store they were in. Seeing that, Taesung says that it must also have come from Kang's power and that all of this is very practical. He says that the boy must prefer this place to the original world because he can do anything there, while Kang continues storing the bottles in his backpack. The boy keeps talking, saying that if he had the power to do this, it would be amazing, but Taesung questions why Kang is looking at him that way. As if he had a little angel in the form of Ares and a demon in the form of Keldian on his shoulders, Kang's mind battles whether to kill the boy or not. Hansu gives up the idea, sighing, and just starts drawing the plan with a stick in the dirt and says for everyone to listen carefully. He explains that when one person throws the incendiary bomb, the other three with melee equipment will advance and attack the creatures. Those who are on the front line will have priority to receive the runes, and Taesung thinks that the boy is very bad at drawing. The blonde boy promptly offers to take the lead, stating that someone competent should protect the front line. Kang ignores him and asks who will throw the bomb. However, Yu and Sangjin raise their hands at the same time. Our protagonist tells the two to reach an agreement on who will throw the bombs, so they stare at each other. Mi tries to use her cuteness and appearance to win over Sangjin, who says that arguing with her feels a bit strange. She continues trying to convince the boy, acting charming, but seeing this, Kang just decides that the two could take turns. After a while, we see Sangjin immersed in his thoughts, holding the Molotov in his hands and wondering where they were going. The boy thinks that he can't say he wants to quit at this point because he came along not wanting to be left behind, but he questions if the rest of the group is okay with this. He watches Mi from behind for some reason, remaining silent and apprehensive about something. Observing the girl, we see that she is trembling with fear, reluctant about everything that is happening but unable to say anything. Even hesitating, Sangjin stays silent with something stuck in his throat. But interrupting the boy's thoughts and surprising Yu, Kang tells everyone to stay alert because the sirens are coming. In the distance as they walk, a strong, frightening aura begins to emanate and several terrifying grunts can be heard. Kang prepares to fight and orders his friend to throw a bottle immediately in the direction of the noises, and the girl starts rummaging through her backpack. Mai, though reluctant, thinks that she won't falter and with a lighter in her hand, starts to light the tip of the bottle's cloth. With the cloth now on fire, the girl asserts that she can do this and immediately throws the bottle in the direction of the creature's noises. The glass shatters on the ground near the monster, immediately causing the alcohol to spread all over the creature's body, and the burning cloth ignites the liquid, setting the siren on fire. Mai is somewhat pleased to have caught one of the monsters, and Kang charges into battle, saying that the rest will attack now. Quickly after seeing the body of one siren fall to the ground, Kang attacks two more standing amidst the flames, swiftly killing them and collecting the runes. Taesung, seeing the boy taking his spot, says that Bastard is grabbing all the runes for himself again, and then he can't keep losing to him. The siren appears near the blonde boy, and the monster promptly moves to attack Taesung, who immediately gets scared and tries to jump back and dodge the strike. As an automatic defense, the boy slashes with his dagger at the creature, hitting it and telling the monster he had lost because it was a worm. After opening his eyes again, Taesung realizes he barely hit it, but immediately sees the siren fall dead to the ground with venom flowing through its body. Looking at his serrated knife completely stained with venom, he thinks that thing worked very well, smiling. Kang, seeing this and with some runes in his hands, states that the poison he gave was very useful and asks if it wasn't worth a few runes for Taesung. Looking at his reflection in the knife, the boy says that with this he could catch up to that bastard Kang in no time. And then a bloody battle spreads all over the place with knife strikes and several incendiary bottles flying through the air. Kang starts thinking that, as he expected, in a fight against paralyzing and flammable venom, we see the siren catching fire. He then adds that bringing the improvised bombs was an excellent choice as he charges at one of the creatures, slicing it immediately. The boy also thinks that the blade of his dagger was already getting dull, but that didn't matter since that was what he prepared the poison for. Taesung keeps smiling, attacking the creatures and enjoying all that bloody battle with a psychopathic feeling. Blinded by his greed, the boy looks to the side and sees 2 runes fallen on the ground, saying that all those runes are his and charges to grab them. However, the boy doesn't notice that one of the sirens is still alive near him, and the beast quickly spits an extremely disgusting slime at the boy. The saliva quickly hits Taesung's knee, causing him to fall backward, saying that everyone was watching him and it was very humiliating. But before he can think about that, with its frightening aura, the monster starts walking toward its victim, ready to devour him. The boy sees that in front of him there were not just one but several demonic beasts wanting his blood, and he panics, trying to move backward. He gets irritated and curses at the monsters, telling them to get away from him immediately. In desperation, seeing several monsters charging at him, Taesung asks Yu Mai-hee for help while putting his knife forward, trying to protect himself. However, the girl panics a bit, and looking into her backpack, she realizes that the incendiary bombs are gone, leaving only one alternative. She asks Sangjin to switch with her, and the boy immediately agrees, asking her to wait a moment. His lighter was failing, and the boy continues trying to light the tip of the bottle's cloth, wishing it would ignite immediately. When the lighter finally lights up, illuminating a dark area right in front of him, one of the monsters is ready to attack Choi. Seeing this, the boy panics, throwing everything up and ruining his plan to defend Taesung. The blonde boy, seeing the last Molotov bottle wasted on the ground, gets irritated. He furiously calls Sangjin an idiot and says he was supposed to throw the damn bomb, not mess everything up. Choi, when he's about to be attacked by the siren, sees a slash passing in front of him, slicing the monster in half. Terrified by everything that happened and the mistake he made, the boy falls back again, just watching the beast's body fall in 2. After eliminating all the remaining sirens and with his blade practically dull, Kang tells everyone to calm down and stick to the plan. Standing in front of Sangjin like a hero, he says that if they do that, there will be no problem. Hansu turns, stating that everyone should take a break and collect their runes, and Sangjin, still shocked by everything, remains silent, looking at the boy. Taesung, seeing this, feels relieved and sighs, saying that for a moment he thought he was going to die. Looking at his leg where he had been injured but now was completely healed, the boy says it must have been thanks to his new ability. Hansu explains to Taesung that if he increases his stamina and rests, he will recover faster, and orders everyone to collect their runes. Kang had already separated the amount everyone was going to receive, and Taesung, seeing this, gets irritated, saying that calculated bastard was too strict in dividing. But looking to the side, the blonde boy sees the runes that Sangjin is collecting and thinks of something. He imagines that if he takes those runes from the boy, it would be better, and then starts walking toward his friend with a frightening aura. Taesung calls the boy by his name, saying that it is a tradition of the Choi family to have no conscience or thoughts, and Sangjin, hearing that, gets irritated. But before the boy can respond, Taesung quickly grabs him by the neck, preventing him from breathing. With a frightening expression, he lifts Choi while starting to get closer to the young man's face. Smiling, the bully tightens his grip on Sangjin's neck while calling out his name. Trying to react, the boy places his hand on the blonde's arm, but he has no strength. With a manic look, Taesung tells Sangjin that he can't even throw a bomb bottle, saying he almost died because of it. Panicking, the boy starts talking and tries to explain himself. In the background, Yumi catches the blonde's attention, questioning what he's doing and ordering him to let the boy go quickly. Dropping him to the ground, he calls him a bastard and lucky. Walking towards Sangjin, the blonde tells him to pay attention and stop being so clueless. Pulling his hair, making a scary face, he says that in the past, Sangjin knew his place and now he just needs to follow others forever without messing up. After scolding him, he goes to grab the boy's rune, but the protagonist quickly throws a dagger on the ground. Startled, Taesung asks what's going on. Without mincing words, Hansu says those runes don't belong to him. Trying to argue, the bully explains that giving those runes to Sangjin is the same as throwing them in the trash because he doesn't do anything. Starting to get irritated, he says they would be better off without the boy and asks if he's wrong to think that way. Responding, Hansu explains that the distribution should be fair and that he shouldn't mess with anyone's livelihood in the first place. Letting it go, the blonde says it's nonsense and warns him not to regret it later. Going to talk to the boy on the ground, he tells him it's better to take care of his own part. Listening to the advice, the boy goes to retrieve his rune. A bit nervous, the girl calls out to the protagonist and asks if he isn't upset because of the group. Worried, she says that with the way things are, she imagined witnessing arguments like that must be bad for him. However, Kang says that for him, everything is fine and he won't complain about something she's not good at. After hearing this reassuring answer, Yumi asks if that means he's staying with the group until the end, explaining that when she looks at him, it feels like he could leave at any moment. But the leader says it's up to them to follow him, because they are doing very well, so they don't need to worry about that. Continuing on the path, Kang goes to the mermaids and sees that they drop stamina and strength runes. Grabbing one of the runes, he thinks that both strength and stamina are important at the moment and that they are also necessary. His strength is at 25, stamina at 24, dexterity at 14, and senses at 15. Suddenly, someone appears in front of him. Expressing great joy, he notes that his combined strength and stamina stats exceed 50. The system notifies that this is the first achievement accomplished by anyone, and the Horned Demon congratulates him. Surprised, the boy smiles and thinks he's caught the guide's attention. Then the little demon asks if he's the traveler who raised his hand last time and says that it seems his judgment was correct. Getting closer, he says they always love those who make an effort. Landing on his head, he explains that he'd like to give a small gift to the most active traveler. The girl approaches them, and the little demon asks if she's curious to know what it's about. Trembling with fear, she asks if this isn't a bit unfair since they had different physical stats. Unbothered, the creature says she doesn't need to be afraid because when they started, they didn't touch other people. Flying close to her, he says they don't kill just because they don't like travelers. With a scary face, he whispers in her ear that there will definitely be exceptions and that she could be one. However, after saying that, he starts laughing, saying he was just joking. Then he gets closer to her again to start explaining, saying that she looks great compared to the others and that she doesn't get rid of this appearance to be at the same level as the rest, concluding that life has always been unfair in some way. Turning back to Kang, he says he wasted time talking about useless things and now will give him the present, though the hero already knows what the gift is in his mind. At that moment, the monster explains that the prize consists of having 3 runes of his choice. Snapping his fingers, he asks which rune he desires, suggesting a few. Showing one in front of him, he explains that although they are consumable, they can even heal a hole in the stomach and most poisons, and Hansu thinks it's useless when a limb is torn off. Surprising the group, they realize it's a healing rune. Starting to speak, the 3 members think only about the idea of the hero using the rune on one of them in case something goes wrong. However, he asks if there is a rune that grants immunity to magic. Smiling, the monster responds that there is, while in the background his group feels disappointed by his choice. Analyzing his options, he thinks healing runes are good, but on the other hand, it's difficult to obtain both magical and physical immunity during the tutorial. Increasing resistance only affects recovery speed, but physical and magical resistance works as a more essential immunity. Thoughtful, he understands that he can compensate for physical attacks up to a certain level using his experience, but magical attacks are a different matter. Choosing the magic immunity rune, his magical immunity is now at 13 points and he thinks that should be enough for now. After the choice, the little demon opens a rift in the air and bids farewell. Surprisingly, the little creature calls the hero handsome Appa, leaving the whole group in shock, realizing that this monster is actually a girl. Turning to his group, he tells them to move on. Seeing their faces, he asks what happened and still perplexed. They respond that it's nothing. Sometime later, already on the 3rd floor, the girl finishes killing another one of the mermaids. Sighing in exhaustion, she thinks it's easier now than before. While picking up her rune, she analyzes Kang, trying to understand what he's doing, wondering if it's poison again. Looking more closely, she questions if these are the same movements as before. Getting closer, she says he has many runes and asks why his speed is still the same. So the hero realizes she has sharp eyes. Showing his arm with some sort of writing on his wrist, he says that's the reason. Curious, the girl asks what that is on his arm. Starting to explain, he says they can accumulate runes this way, telling her to stretch out her hands while thinking about the rune collection. Surprised, she asks how he knows this, and he replies that it's because of his superpower. She even wanted to try, but the boy says it's no use copying him, because it delays hunting since she won't be able to always carry many runes. Besides, those runes won't matter if a person dies, and all the runes he collects this way will drop if he dies. Then the emo asks why he's gathering the runes in this way. Kang replies that the reason is so he can negotiate, and that although it's difficult to do so now, once the rules are established, they can be used as money in the tutorial zone and tells them to take one at a time. Irritated, the blonde asks how the hero can belittle the group and why he can't do the same. Looking back, he thinks these people still don't realize the situation they're in, but they'll get the picture when they descend and start cursing. As he picks up his dagger, he thinks that before that, they need to do a general review. Then he calls out to his group. With his hands in his pockets, he explains that even if they follow or collect, each person can do what they want. Throwing the dagger on the ground, he says that instead, he needs everyone to listen to him. Acting like a leader, he orders them to hand over their weapons. Confused, the blonde asks if the guy thinks he's a thief and says he already has a weapon to use. However, the protagonist responds that he can't fight with it because the blade is already worn out. Very irritated, he questions the hero, calling him a bastard and ridiculous, and he asks how they can fight if he takes everything. Then he asks what the hero wants the group to do. Jung says he'll hand over his weapon,